Kenmore City Council is called to order. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Sassen. Here. Councilmember Shrubnik. Here. Councilmember Lutsis.
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane. Here. Councilmember Culver.
Unless there are any objections, Councilmember Culver is excused. There are no objections. He is excused.
And Mayor Herbig.
I am here. That brings us to our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the city of Kenmore is situated upon the ancestral lands of the Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Soxhawtla, Duwamish, Stillaguamish, Tulalip, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, and other tribes who are part of the Coast Salish peoples. We recognize and express our deepest respect for their enduring stewardship and profound relationship with this land, which they have cherished and protected since time immemorial. We honor the First Peoples, acknowledge their vibrant cultures, and commit ourselves to learning from their wisdom in our journey to promote justice, equity, and mutual understanding. We pledge to stand alongside these communities in acknowledging past injustices and working towards a future that respects and celebrates the diverse heritage of this land. Now, if you'd all please stand and join me in the flag salute. That brings us to agenda approval. Unless there are any objections, the agenda will stand approved as published. There are no objections. The agenda is approved. That brings us to 3 proclamations that we have today. The first one is for Affordable Housing Month. Whereas stable and affordable housing is a fundamental human right and essential to the well-being and prosperity of individuals, families, and communities. And whereas access to affordable housing is crucial for addressing homelessness, reducing poverty, promoting economic opportunity, and fostering social inclusion and cohesion. And whereas the availability of affordable housing contributes to the overall health and vitality of our community, supporting workforce development, attracting businesses, and enhancing the quality of life for all residents. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated many existing financial constraints for low and moderate income households, and whereas the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recognize safe, healthy, and affordable housing within communities of opportunity as key social determinants of health. And whereas everyone benefits from affordable housing, including the people who reside in these properties, their neighbors, businesses, employers, and the community as a whole. And whereas the Kenmore City Council recognizes the dedication and efforts of partners, organizations, advocates, policymakers, developers, and community members who work tirelessly to increase access to affordable housing and create equitable housing opportunities for all. Now, therefore, I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May to be Affordable Housing Month throughout the City of Kenmore. And I would like to invite up Imagine Housing Vice President of Real Estate Development, Tony Draws, to say a few words and accept the proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, audience members. On behalf of Imagine Housing and our partners at Habitat for Humanity, I would just really like to express our thanks and gratitude for including us in this proclamation. As a practitioner who does this on a daily basis to create affordable housing across the region, it is very refreshing when cities, especially such as Kenmore, take tangible action to create new opportunities. It's one thing and wonderful to talk about the situation of needing affordable housing, but taking that next step and dedicating resources and partnering with partners in the community to create these opportunities is really next level, and we greatly appreciate that. So again, on behalf of our partners and Imagine Housing, thank you so much for partnering with us. You've been an amazing partner, very collaborative, very understanding, and just we're really happy to be here in this community.
Thank you. I think I speak for the council when I say that we're happy to be partnering with you also. Would you like to come up and grab a quick picture and we can give you the proclamation? Our next proclamation is for Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Month. Whereas walking and bicycling are healthy, environmentally friendly, and affordable modes of transportation that improve community well-being and quality of life. And whereas ensuring the safety of pedestrian and bicyclists is vital to encouraging more people to choose active transportation, thereby reducing traffic congestion and greenhouse gas emissions. And whereas Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Month provides an opportunity to raise awareness about the importance of safe walking and biking practices, educate the public about traffic laws and regulations, and encourage active transportation options. And whereas we recognize the need to invest in infrastructure improvements such as sidewalks, crosswalks, bike lanes, and trails to enhance the safety and accessibility of our streets for pedestrians and bicyclists of all ages and abilities. And whereas the Kenmore City Council continues to make enhancing multimodal transportation, including pedestrian and bicycle safety, a top 5 priority for the city. And whereas the city continues to take great strides in creating bicycle and pedestrian friendly community. And whereas all people deserve to be able to get where they are going safely, whether by driving, riding transit, bicycling, or walking. Now therefore, I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May to be Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Month throughout the City of Kenmore. And our final proclamation for the day is for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Whereas the month of May is designated to be Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, a time to honor and recognize the rich histories, vibrant cultures, and invaluable contributions of individuals and communities of Asian, Native American, and Pacific Islander descent. And whereas the AANHPI communities encompass a vast diversity of cultures, languages, and experiences from East Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, the Pacific Islands, and beyond, each adding to the dynamic fabric of our society. And whereas Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is an opportunity to celebrate and honor the achievements, resilience, and cultural diversity of these communities, acknowledging their profound impact on our shared history despite institutional and systemic injustices that prevent and limit their achievements and contributions. We acknowledge this legacy and reaffirm our commitment to equity, inclusion, and justice for all. And whereas celebrating this month provides an occasion for education and reflection, fostering greater understanding, appreciation, and inclusion of the experiences and perspectives of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander individuals and communities. And whereas we recognize the importance of ensuring that every member of our community is valued, respected, and empowered to thrive within our community. And whereas during AANHPI Heritage Month, we celebrate the strength and resilience of these communities and recognize their critical role in shaping the cultural, economic, and social landscape of our city, state, and nation. Now therefore, I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May to be Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month throughout the City of Kenmore. That brings us to my favorite part of the agenda. Where's the fun?
Well, we're excited to share that Where's the Fun was this weekend's Earth Day celebration. We have some pictures. It was a smashing success. The weather was great. As you can see, there was no rain and the sun was out for most of the event. There were 15 vendor booths offering a variety of educational materials, giveaways, and fun activities for people of all ages. Attendees were engaged and seemed to enjoy themselves. And a particular highlight was Uncle Stinky's Magic Marionette Animals. And also the complimentary coffee bar. It was always a big hit with the adults. So really appreciate all of our staff who came out and were part of the event, made it a success, and excited for everyone who attended.
Wonderful. Unfortunately, I was out of town, so I wasn't able to make it, but that looked like a great event. That brings us to public comments. We want to welcome everybody here to the council's meeting. Please address your comments to the mayor and the council. Folks will have 3 minutes to speak. The presiding, please state your name and city of residence and keep within the allotted time. To make every person feel welcome and safe here, please refrain from booing, clapping, heckling, yelling, or other interruptions. Please note under Washington State law, RCW 4217A 555, public comment time may not be used to support or oppose candidates or ballot measures. Thank you for keeping your remarks focused on city business. The meeting is recorded for transparency. Thank you for being here and for sharing your input respectfully. Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. We have two guests on site wishing to speak, Patrick O'Brien, followed by Steve Yoder, and two guests online, Stacy Valenzuela and David Dorian. Mr. O'Brien?
Good evening, Pat O'Brien, Kenmore, Washington. After the last meeting, I heard some sort of litigation might be taken off after a company or a person named Chateau. So I looked that up, and there seems to be a construction company that is no longer in business. They don't have a phone number or an email address to reach them. And I'm wondering, if you're going to have a lawsuit, you have to have a defendant, and it doesn't look like you have one. And if you know anything about corporate law, you'd know that the corporation seems to be the only thing you can sue. And the nominal cost for a court case is going to be $150,000 to $300,000. So if you're going to sue a company that's out of business, I'd think about it before I did that. There's also a litany of cases that have already been run through the Kenmore hearing examiner, the King County Superior Court, and ultimately appeals made to the Supreme Court of the state of Washington. And Kenmore has not fared well. They have not fared well at all. And if anybody would like me to share some of those court cases, if they seem to be too far back in your history books, then we can certainly bring those up and show what sort of brutalization occurred to the city budget because of bad ideas. Next, I'd like to say that you're under a budgetary crunch, and our police chief is going to be looking for money in excess of anything we've ever paid for insurance and other things, and you have to come up with an idea how you're going to fund that. And I would recommend that it's not going to be property taxes. It's probably not going to be sales taxes, because you have not brought anything to this town that is yielding that kind of an increase. So I suggested a ride-along program where people like me could ride along with the police officers and put on a uniform and help. Okay, next is no giving away free land. We've got the property across from Safeway. We've got other properties that we've engaged in, and the city buys them for millions of dollars, and they go, oh, this is going to help King County and the state, so we're just going to give you this land that the taxpayers didn't vote on, and here you go. Now, put some really neat buildings there that's going to increase the appeal of downtown Kenmore. That doesn't seem to be your plan. And then the last thing is, we've got Earth Day, but you've got Lake Point and the asphalt plant to deal with.
Mr. Yoder?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The City of Kenmore has a unique opportunity to join with Kirkland in a state-sanctioned pilot program for noise cameras. There would be zero cost to the city for a few of these cameras at strategic locations for collecting data as a first step. Illegally modified exhaust systems on vehicles are hurting us all and harming our environment. The damage done can be lifelong. Our pets and wildlife are also unwilling victims. The negative health implications are well documented. Our quality of life and property values are being negatively impacted. Many of the offenders are just passing through on 522 Simons Road or heading to or from Kirkland on 68th Avenue Northeast. Noise pollution is being compared to secondhand smoke. The recipient is an unwilling participant of this illegal behavior and is powerless to stop it. The amount of carbon monoxide being spewed voluntarily into our atmosphere by these offenders is 8 to 10 times the legal limit. In 2005, the state legislature phased out emission testing based on their calculation that the program wouldn't be needed by 2020. Unfortunately, they were wrong. The only purpose of these modifications is a look-at-me attitude. They assume that we're powerless to stop this bad behavior. We can only estimate how many times an hour or day and how many decibels without this data. Stand by Les Schwab or onto Lake Forest Park. From our home at Inglewood Shores, we can hear the same vehicle blasting exhaust loudly from right here at City Hall all the way to the McDonald's on 145th. I should not have to close my doors and windows or stop a conversation because of illegal behavior. I wish to thank Councilperson Lutzis and Police Chief Moen for meeting with me on this important issue, and I look forward to discussing with anybody else that's interested and has the time to talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stacy Valenzuela, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We hear you. Go on.
Thank you. Stacy Valenzuela, Kenmore. Our police do a great job in Kenmore. We do have quite a few neighbors, though, that are tired of the trespassing, the stolen cars, stolen mail, stolen packages, and not feeling safe walking near City Hall or Safeway, where a young girl and a senior was attacked. Why do many residents feel the laws, judges, and prosecutors are failing to hold the criminals harm for the innocent, law-abiding residents? Accountability. What is the number of Kenmore cases at the community court? What should matter most is that the offender harmed an innocent person, the victim, with no choice, no action, or weapon to defend themselves or their property. Most times, these offenders have no remorse. The innocent victims and public safety should be at the highest priority. In regards to the affordable housing, why Kenmore has not provided extremely low affordable housing units after years stating the priority of the council was to build affordable housing? The housing levels of affordable units brought forward by staff labeled only inclusionary zoning are excluding these limits, but we are so cost burdened at 60 to 70%. Similar is the mislabeling of the senior housing for Housing First Permanent Supportive Plymouth Housing. The Regional Affordable Housing King County Dashboard has shown for years that 30% AMI and 50% AMI and below rental level affordable housing units and 50 to 60% home ownership are the highest desperately needed in Kenmore and throughout King County. I know of a handful of developers that included Image Housing that had been attempting for years to bring truly affordable housing to fulfill some of these needs here in Kenmore. The council has an opportunity to fill these needs and priorities. There is a lot of grants and the opportunity. We also need the 25% projected of units in the TOD to be affordable as well on all projects. Please read the article by Lakeside Partners, Filling the Gap. At their presentation, you heard incomes of most of our vulnerable neighbors confirmed that we have been sharing with you for years. What are you going to do before more homeless on fixed incomes, more families of homeless are on our streets? Please do the right thing. Build the right level of housing that we need, 30% and below and 50% and below. We're desperately needing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dorian, are you online with us? David Dorian? David Dorian going once?
Oh, hello. Can you hear me? Sorry, I think I had the wrong name. So, Dorian,
We hear you. Go on.
resident of Kenmore, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council members. I want to thank you for holding this meeting this evening on this topic, the topic of public safety and criminal justice. I've always found this meeting to be very informative. I think the data that is shared is very useful, particularly on the types of crimes that we're seeing in Kenmore, but also the other things that our residents are experiencing that are in the realm of public safety. I've also found it very useful in the past to hear our public defenders speak about the nature of equity. So really, the types of crimes that have been committed in Kenmore, but also the nature of those who come into the circle of crime and the need to treat them equitably and find a way back that is restorative using tools like the community court that we have. I think it's a little bit tough going before the presentation, so I'm gonna have to guess at some of the content, but I think seeing the numbers for the racer has been great. I believe that's a big increase on the numbers that we saw last year. I think when I look at it, it's roughly 1/30th of our policing budget we put towards racer. So it's great to see the ability to bring in cross-functional responders who can help with a different skill set to help de-escalate and meet people where they are in that moment of heightened life, if I can put it in that way. I know Chief Mona has often talked about the fact that nobody's at their best at 2 a.m. So I think having folks who can help out when people are not at their best is very important. I also did want to note that it's a particularly difficult time for several in our community because of the nature of the current climate, the way that that policing is being used in concert with immigration enforcement in many parts of the country. I think we have to be aware of that when we are engaging with the community. And I saw, as I said, I was going to guess at some of the content, the reference to the Nurturing Trust workshops that I think have been on the docket or close to on the docket for around about 5 years now and are happening now. And I think that's very positive to have that police relationship with the community. However, I also think we need relationships similar to that outside of policing because of the nature of the current climate. Communities are likely to be afraid of police in certain contexts. So not to say that policing can't fulfill that function, but I think we need additional ways to get in touch with community members and give them similar content that isn't delivered by somebody who's a member of law enforcement at this moment. So just making that point as we're dealing with lots coming down from a federal level that's impacting us at a local level. I think that's somewhere we need to focus. So thank you. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Mayor Herbeck. That completes our speakers list.
All right. That brings us to the consent agenda. The chair to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is adopted unanimously. For the next part, for the rest of the meeting, we're actually going to move down to the big table in front of us. So do it. All right, so the rest of the evening is a public safety study session. And the first part of that will be King County District Court, State of the Court 2025, presented by Judge Karama Hawkins, Judge Raul Martinez, Kimberly Howells from the King County District Court Operations Director, Mariana I'm so sorry. Constanova, okay. And Whitney Eishen from the Shoreline Courthouse. And please make sure that your mics are turned on also, just for the viewing public.
All right, all right.
Thank you.
I always say anytime
mic's not turned on or somebody says they can't hear me, I say, you mean me? Uh, So I just want to thank the city of Kenmore for again hosting this very informative and important event that you do every year. It is always such a pleasure to report to the city and to provide some information on the service that we are providing to the city of Kenmore, who we value very, very highly as the best partner that we could ever have. Kenmore has been wonderful. My name is Karama Hawkins. I am one of your judges with King County District Court. I sit in the Shoreline Courthouse, and at our courthouse, we hear cases for the city of Kenmore, anything from infractions, camera tickets, to criminal charges. And so I want to introduce to everyone my team, and I'm going to start to my left with Judge Martinez, my benchmate.
Thank you. Hello. It's such an honor to be here again. I think this is the third year in a row. And it's always a pleasure to come and be a part of the community. I live right up on the hill, so this is home to me and my family. And, thank you for your service. And we're really looking forward to going through our presentation with you.
My name is Kim Howells, and I'm the City Court Operations Director for King County District Court, and I'm super excited to be here. So if anybody ever needs anything, definitely reach out. So I'm the main contact for all of our cities, so nice to be.
Hello, my name is Marina Konstantinova. I am your Shoreline District Court and Kenmore District Court manager for the past 10 years. As a pleasure, as always. Nice to see everyone.
Hi, everybody. My name is Whitney Eishen. I am the court coordinator at the Shoreline Courthouse. Thank you very much.
And pardon me, I have to acknowledge a very special guest. I didn't know that she would be able to be here with us today. And had I known, you'd be sitting right up here next to me, Alexandra Stepanova. She is a volunteer with our community court program. She is there every single week. And so I am so sorry. I'm so glad that you can be here, and I will give everybody some information about what Alexandra does for us when we get to that section of our presentation. Oh.
Okay, so we are going to divide up the slide presentation, and I'll go first. And so I will also be referring to my notes here so that I can be conscious and respectful of your time. I know that we have a busy agenda tonight, so please don't be distracted by my notes. All right, here, pretty apparent. It's really an honor to be a part of the justice system for the city of Kenmore. It's a beautiful place, both physically, very diverse, wonderful community. Before we dive into the details of King County District Court, here's just a very basic rudimentary overview for those who find it helpful of the three branches of government. You'll see the judicial, executive, and legislative branches. Notwithstanding the federal and state levels, this is what the branches currently look like at the county level. You'll see depicted Superior Court and District Court, which comprises the judicial branch. Judge K2 Shaw is the presiding judge for Superior Court, and our very own Judge Rebecca Robertson is depicted there at the top on the right. She is the presiding judge for King County District Court. And here are your local branches of government. Our district court serves as Kenmore's judicial branch. Judge Hawkins and I presiding over Kenmore cases. Of course, Kenmore City Council, Mayor Herbig, and City Manager Stephanie Lukash comprise the other branches of Kenmore's government branches, or Kenmore's government structure. Although both Judge Hawkins and I handle Kenmore cases, our primary responsibilities can vary a bit. But specific to Kenmore, I have primary responsibility for hearing Kenmore City cases, and Judge Hawkins has primary responsibility for the Shoreline Kenmore Community Court cases. Of course, we both also hear Kenmore traffic infraction cases and civil protection orders that originate out of Kenmore. Okay, now I'm going to dive into a little bit more detail about the organizational structure and substance of our district court. Because we handled cases countywide, King County District Court operates at 9 courthouse locations. And they range from Shoreline in the north, Auburn in the south, and Issaquah to the east. We also contract with 13 cities in addition to handling all of unincorporated King County's civil and criminal cases. King County District Court has 25 judges who are all elected through 5 electoral districts. The districts are the West, Southeast, Southwest, Northeast, and Shoreline districts. Kenmore is located in the Shoreline District. King County District Court's leadership structure is divided into 3 divisions, West, South, and East. And as you can see here, Shoreline is located in the West Division. Our district court judicial leadership is comprised of an executive committee, which consists of our chief presiding judge, assistant chief presiding judge, and our 3 division presiding judges. Our colleagues serving in these leadership capacities have stepped up to lead on administrative matters, and they do so tirelessly and often in addition to other workloads. Here we have, just for a quick reference, our King County District Court mission statement, which is to serve the public by providing an accessible forum for the fair, efficient, and understandable resolution of civil and criminal cases, and maintaining an atmosphere of respect for the dignity of all individuals. In a nutshell, we seek to provide access to justice for the constituents and the members of our community. It's a privilege to do this for Kenmore on a daily basis. Some courthouses do things a little different. For example, Issaquah handles only civil cases, but at Shoreline, we do everything, including both civil and criminal cases for the cities of Kenmore and Shoreline. And so if we zoom in a bit on the criminal matters, you can see that we handle gross misdemeanor and misdemeanor criminal cases. And the subject matter involved in those cases often ranges from domestic violence, DUIs, assaults, thefts. Many of those cases originate from underlying substance use and mental health issues. We also handle a litany of civil matters. Protection orders are one of the bigger tasks that we handle, and there's a wide variety of those, everything from anti-harassment, stalking, domestic violence, sexual assault, extreme risk protection orders that we hear. And we start with a temporary protection order hearing and then a full order hearing if it's appropriate. Small claims cases, we handle a lot of those for folks that live in the Kenmore community, name changes, and of course infractions. Judge supervised probation is one of the greatest services that district court is able to provide to the community. In Superior Court, oftentimes a judge is restricted to a standard sentencing range, and then folks are sent off after the sentencing to be in the care of the Department of Corrections. And district court varies from that in that judges maintain an active role after sentencing, and often that's through a suspended sentence with conditions that will keep that sentence suspended. And those conditions often relate to mental health evaluations and treatment, substance use evaluations and treatment. And so this is really a way for us to be able to help mentor people along to make sure that they're getting the services that they need that will make us all safer, and hopefully the aim is to reduce rates of recidivism. The outstanding team of Shoreline probation officers are tasked with meeting with, monitoring, and frankly encouraging people to complete the conditions of their sentence. And we're very fortunate to have some very able people working at the Shoreline Courthouse. All right, in a minute, Judge Hawkins is going to show you a detailed breakdown of the court's caseload, and you're going to see that numbers-wise, most cases are parking and infraction related, but the reality is that most of our judicial time is spent on criminal cases. And as you can see in this slide, there's a reason for that. Infractions require one hearing. Criminal cases, on the other hand, involve multiple hearings, ranging from arraignments to pretrial to motions, readiness hearings, trial, and then the follow-up probationary review hearings. Those cases can often last 5 years. We've taken an oath to uphold the Constitution, and we take that very seriously. These are the rights that we safeguard on a daily basis in criminal cases. And you can see they range from the right against unlawful search and seizure, against self-incrimination, the right to counsel, the right to a jury trial, the right to a speedy trial, and the right to hear and question witnesses and challenge evidence from the city. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Judge Hawkins. Thank you again. It's an honor to be here.
So going on to the tools and the resources that we have to help us in ensuring due process and fulfilling our obligations to the city, to the citizenry, and to the people that come into the justice system. Tools for rehabilitation and tools for punishment. So those are the carrot and the stick, as it were. What can we do to better an individual's position, their personal life, in order to keep them from coming back to the justice system? That's really the goal. And in situations where we're not able to get there, other tools such as jail and other tools may be imposed. So there really is a breadth that we have to work with, and we do try to utilize this, all of the tools that we have. Some of the things that are listed here under punishment, including community service and restitution, I don't particularly see those things as punishment. Those are different in my mind. When I give someone community service, it's giving them an opportunity to make amends, whether it be making a person whole for a wrong that they did to the person, damage that they've caused, or to the community that they're in, by giving them an opportunity to serve the community that they harmed by engaging in the criminal behavior. So I don't really see that as punishment. I think maybe sometimes the people who are required to do that as a requirement of sentence might not see it that way, but in the long run, that's really, my particular perspective. Do you agree with that, Judge?
I do. I think if we look at the statistics, the get tough on crime, ham-fisted approach of the 90s, the statistics tell the story. It's led to greater recidivism, greater criminality, more violent crimes. And so I think that when jail is imposed, it really is a tool to use to encourage people to comply with the evaluation and the treatment conditions. And sometimes there are also obviously safety considerations as well that require incarceration when it's appropriate. But for the most part, the aim of imposing jail is to really make the community safer by making the person be in a better position. At least that's the objective. And so this is one of the tools that we have at our disposal to help people, to encourage people to do what they're supposed to do.
When it comes to funding the court, there are different pots and ways that we are funded to do very specific things within our court. The general fund comes from property and sales tax, and that generally runs our courts, administratively. There are just the normal court processes. That does not include therapeutic courts. That's a completely separate funding source. It comes through mid-funding, the mental illness and drug dependency behavioral health sales tax. That's imposed countywide, so that does not come out of the general fund. And our therapeutic courts throughout King County use those funds to help administer the different therapeutic courts that we have. And then there's the King County Veterans, Seniors, and Human Resources Services Levy, and that's for like regional veterans court. Here's some of the figures from 2024, and I believe that this is court-wide. You can, or is this for the city of Kenmore? Yeah, this is for the city of Kenmore. My apologies. And so most of the cases are infractions and parking, and because of the the new program that Kenmore has for the camera tickets, there's been a substantial adjustment in the numbers that we see, at least with respect to infractions. But numbers are going up, period, in all areas, criminal and civil. Part of that has to do with, obviously we've come out of COVID, all restrictions with respect to, and I know it's different for Kenmore because, this is a city contract, so we're doing things for the city, but generally speaking, court-wide, we're seeing numbers grow quite a bit, and that has a lot to do with it. I think there is a market increase in Kenmore's case filings, and again, those really have to do with the camera infraction program that was started.
And just a quick clarification, does that fall under the parking?
Yes, it
bits of
does.
Okay,
Yes.
I figure as much, but I just want to
It
clarify for the
absolutely
public.
does, yes.
Thank you.
Camera tickets are considered parking tickets. That's how they're treated the same. And this, over the last 6 years, kind of shows you what I was talking about, that trend. In 2022 is when all of the COVID restrictions were lifted. I think Governor Inslee lifted those COVID restrictions in October of 2022, and I think King County District Court did it a little bit sooner than that. So we're starting to see that increase in filings, and that's but a lot of what we're seeing here in Kenmore, again, is the infractions. Here's specific to the traffic infraction program. We started tracking these numbers at the beginning of 2025, and you can see the shift that has occurred. Now we get to come to my favorite topic, which is the community court. And I think it's important. I want to address one of the public comments that talked about why we're not seeing certain things in community court. There was the story about the person who was assaulted just on the street over here, and community court is not a place where violent offenders go. That is not the purpose of community court, and the underlying issues of an assault case are not ones that are appropriate for community court. And I see that our prosecuting attorney, Chief Prosecutor Sarah Roberts, is here, so she may be able to answer more questions about that. But community court is really about addressing the continual systematic criminal trespass, theft cases. I don't want to say that they're petty, but they're repetitive and very hard on the community. And what we're trying to do is harm reduction. We are trying to meet people where they are at and to connect them to services so that we can get them out of the criminal justice system, get them out of the cycle of committing offenses to feed things like addiction and survival due to homelessness, and to get them to a point where they're able to survive without having to resort to these things that harm our communities so much. Behind every individual that shoplifts from a store, that trespasses in an abandoned building, there's a story. And we're able to learn about the stories of the individuals that come to community court. And it is a very special, important part of what this court offers the city of Kenmore. I'm so glad that Kenmore joined us in the work that we're doing. And I think that over time, we are going to there are some things that we need to work out logistically because we're dealing with individuals that have challenges, oftentimes getting to court. So it takes time to get them into the process where we're able to provide them with this very important opportunity. And we're working on some additional ways to make that happen. So In 2024, Community Court had 9 participants graduate. One of those was from the city of Kenmore. They graduated in, and we have one potential additional graduate that occurred in March, so that's 2. And we had 30 participants as of December 31st, 2024, 3 of those in Kenmore, and those numbers are going to be changing. I know that Ms. Roberts and the Public Defender's Office are working very hard to ensure that those referrals are continuing to be made. And so we are trying to work as a team collaboratively to funnel what cases are appropriate into the community court program if the individual is willing to do that. It is a voluntary program. It is not one that I would force someone to enter into. They are going to either join and participate willingly, or they'll be in mainstream court. And so that's really, once that offer is made, it's a decision that each individual has to make themselves. In the year of 2024, we had 704 total resource center visits. I think it ended up being a little bit higher. We are working on getting as much engagement with both the cities and communities of Kenmore and Shoreline as well. I don't know that they are tracking specific individuals that come from Kenmore to visit, but I know that lots of Kenmore folks do come to visit our resource center. It is available to anyone. We gave out over 850 free lunches to individuals that came, and we're hoping to be able to expand on that in 2025. I'm skipping a little bit, but what I wanted to talk about is some of the things that we discussed last year in terms of what we were hoping to accomplish and what we wanted to add to our program. We were able to obtain a community court case manager. She actually helps with all 3 soon to be 4 community court programs throughout King County. Her name is Brittany Morak, and she is thebomb.com. She is so, I mean, I really hope that if you have an opportunity to come and visit community court, I know that you, council member, have come up and seen us after our last invitation. Thank you. That meant a great deal. That you were able to kind of see what we do. For you to come and meet her, I think would be wonderful. She has so much experience in this type of setting, and her skill set has been so useful for the individuals that are justice involved participants in the community court program. She has vast experience in connecting people in her past life with services that are wraparound in nature. She has experience working with assisting the different entities that help individuals once they're involved in the community court program to talk to one another. So, sometimes it can be very difficult to manage all of these different pieces, and she is able to do that. And our community court manager, Kara Wilson, and they work hand in hand every week. They are so good, and they are an excellent team. But Brittany has been a fantastic addition to our team. She helps create individualized plans for every single member or participant in community court. She and Kara are the ones that are having those conversations, that are reaching out to the providers, that are going to different community organizations and collecting that information, providing it to the individual, helping them come up with a plan, sometimes with the help of the court, to make sure that they're following through on the things that they need to do. And her addition to our program has been so incredibly remarkable. I also want to touch on Miss Stepanova Alexandra. She is a student. What college do you go to? University, that's right. That's right. A Husky, go Dogs. So she is a student at the University of Washington, and she makes time to be with us every single week. She is my representative at the monthly Peer Recovery Navigator Program meetings, and she keeps me advised of everything that's happening in that program, which I will talk about a little bit later. And she's been willing to take that on. She's there every week. She is helping manage and keep together information with respect to what happens during court for the participants in community court. And she is so good and so eager and so willing to give of her time. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts for being willing to take time and be there, even though you're dealing with school and finals and goodness, things I forgot that I had to deal with when I was in college. So thank you. Thank you. I also want to acknowledge other people that could not be here today, but that really do. They're so vital to our program that we would not be able to do what we do on a weekly basis without them. I mentioned her already, Kara Wilson. She is our community court manager. She's not able to be here today. I hope she's watching on Zoom. If you are, hello, we miss you and we hope that you can join us next year. But she has been incredible when it comes to managing everything that's happening in the resource center, managing what's happening with the participants, doing the screening to make sure that we have the information that we need to be able to come up with a plan that's going to help get them what they need so that we can get them out of this criminal justice system and out of this cycle that they're probably in already by the time they get to us. So I also want to acknowledge Mike D. He is our technical navigator. He volunteers for every single community court, community court in King County District Court. So he goes from Shoreline to Redmond to Auburn every single week. And he's going to be added to the Bellevue Community Court as well. So Mike D., if you're here watching on Zoom, thank you too. Thank you. Heidi Shepard. She is with Lake City Partners and she is an absolute angel. I tell you, she's there every week. If she's not there, it bums me out. But she is such a wonderful, stalwart resource. And she gives of her time every single week, unless something dire is happening, she is there and she is connecting people to help community service resources, housing resources. She is just so wonderful and so dedicated to the participants in community court. I do not know what we would do without her. Yes.
Heidi's the executive director of NUSA as well.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, she is. Yes, she is. So, and I know you all know her very well. And she is the executive director of NUSA. Thank you. But she is Miss Heidi to me, the epic volunteer of volunteers. And we just couldn't do what we do without her. Hope I'm not forgetting anyone. Okay, if I'm forgetting anyone, please forgive me. I apologize. You're in my heart if I forgot you, and just know that I need you too, so don't go anywhere. Oh, Kate Tramontana. Kate Tramontana is, she's a community court manager. And she manages all of our community court programs as well. She has so much experience. I first met her when I was a public defender and she was running the therapeutic courts. And so to see her transition to this position has been so helpful. She has been able to add so much value to the entirety of King County District Court therapeutic court programs, including community court and our therapeutic courts. So thank you very much. Thank you. Kate Tramontana, fabulous. The other thing, okay, so last year I told you all that we were working on starting a life skills course. And we did it. We are about halfway through our second cohort. It was relatively small last year. We had some bumps. It was a little bit difficult to navigate during the first year, but I was able to debrief with the administrator of the program, and I got some excellent feedback. The individuals who participated in life skills hated to see it end. Some people, I mean, they weren't exactly happy about having to go, but once they got in, it was a community that was very special. And the feedback that we got was that this is something that we want to have continue. So we are about halfway through, maybe a third way through our second cohort, which started at the beginning of March. And it's not just community court involved individuals that are in our life skills program. It is anybody throughout cities of Shoreline, cities of Kenmore, and anybody, in King County District Court who wants to go could potentially go, but so far it's just been Kenmore and Shoreline. So I am so eager to show you the numbers the next time we come. So at the time that we created this PowerPoint, there were about 15 referrals for the winter cohort, and I know that there's about 10 more since then. So I will keep you posted and share that information and that data with you, and we'll have something more robust to show you next year. But we are just so proud of this program. We also had a pilot program called Parents Connect. We got wind of it very late in the game, so we didn't get to advertise it as much as we wanted to, but it was essentially a program that would pay parents and give resources to help them be better parents and give them support. And this was something that was worked on through the University of Washington as well. And they haven't done a subsequent pilot or created a new standardized, consistent program yet. But I have been in touch with Mr. Oppenheim about that, and I think you too, Stephanie, earlier in the year. And so as soon as we get more information on that, Kenmore is going to be in the loop with it because it was such a unique opportunity. And, it was a lot of single parents, a lot of parents that had limited resources and not a lot of support. And so to get them connected with some help and to give them a little extra to help them through was just really an exciting opportunity. So we're so glad to be able to provide that. The Recovery Navigator Program. I talked a little bit about this, and this is the program that Alexandra sits at the meetings for on my behalf on a monthly basis. Recovery navigators are individuals who have been usually in the depths of addiction, homelessness, perhaps even mental health issues, involved in the justice system and have been able to, through treatment, through recovery, through harm reduction, get to a point where they are stable, they are sober, and they are giving of their life experience to other peoples who are justice involved that need that kind of support. It's like a warm handoff to somebody who has been there and can walk that line with you. And so we've been able to implement the Recovery Navigator program, not just as an ongoing weekly participant in our community court program, but also refer more people in our mainstream cases to the Recovery Navigator program as well. So this is very new. This is, they've been coming weekly since the beginning of the year. So I am really excited to share more data about the Recovery Navigator program at the beginning at our meeting next year, which I am really looking forward to and excited to talk about. And I talked with you about Ms. Stepanova, and this is the awesome part. So Judge Martinez has decided and agreed to step up and preside over community court when I am not able to. So we have a trial every month. We have a trial week every month at our courthouse. And on those weeks, I usually have several cases that are scheduled to go to trial. And that includes on Tuesday afternoons, which is when our community court program is happening. And because we did not want there to be a disconnect, we wanted to ensure continuity of care for all participants and connection with participants. Judge Martinez, bless your heart and thank you, was willing to step in and be there when I can't every last, let's see, it's the Tuesday, the last full week. Well, it has to be a full week. Yeah. So the last full week of each month on that Tuesday, Judge Martinez is presiding over community court. So.
Well, I can tell you that it's one thing in an academic sense to hear the theories behind community court, a collaborative partnership with the prosecutor, the public defender, the court, the support, social supports. But when you see it in practice, it is life-changing. It leaves a mark on everybody that's there, judges included. The folks, when they come in physically, are not in the best of conditions, obviously, that led them to the underlying charges. When they leave, it's a whole new person if they're successful. And you truly feel like you're doing a service for the community there, because we're all better off when folks are stabilized and out of the criminal justice system. So it's a magical thing that happens there. Nothing against the small claims cases that I don't get to try Tuesdays now at the end of the month, but it's a special program, and we're glad that we can bring that to Kenmore.
You know, this couldn't be a better team. And Judge Martinez has, you know, really done an excellent job of presiding in community court. He is thoughtful and he knows the cases, he knows the individuals, he asks me about them if he doesn't know. So he's been wonderful to partner with in community court. So I thank you for that. It's difficult work, but it's been a joy to do community court with you. All right, so I'm almost done talking. I am so excited to announce the community court's 5-year anniversary that is taking place on May 6th. And I want to invite everyone, whether you can come in person or on Zoom, to join us in celebrating 5 years with Shoreline and 2 years with Kenmore, having a community court program in place for these very wonderful special communities. Starting at 1:30 on May 6th. It says starting at 1. But we're not going to really be doing anything till 1:30. So, I mean, you know, that might be cutting into your lunch. So if you want to come on up or log on to Zoom at 1:30, we would love to have you join us so that you can see what we do. We're going to celebrate the accomplishment that this has been, especially at the time where this community court program started. We started our community court program and then COVID hit, you know, so we had to pivot very quickly. And then when Kenmore joined, as we were coming out of the COVID deadlock, we were able to re-engage the communities and restart a very special and important program that we hope is going to make a change within the communities. And just to reiterate, you know, the things that were discussed by a couple of the folks who spoke during public comment, those are things that everybody cares about. We as judges and we as the court want to be effective in what it is that we are doing. We want to provide due process. We want to provide a way to make the wrong things right to the extent that we're able to. And these are not easy things. They're very difficult things. And the impact that things like homelessness and addiction and mental illness have had on our communities has been devastating. We can see it when we go into stores, when we see drugstores, not restocking because, people are going to walk out of the door, to see laundry detergent behind lock and key. These are the impacts that affect everyday individuals in the communities, and we know that, and we get it. And we have to deal with it in a common sense way. We have to think outside of the box if we're going to turn this thing around, and if we're going to have an impact that's positive on the community. We can't lock everybody up, and we certainly can't just let everybody get away with everything either. So we're trying to come up with a myriad of approaches to handle things as they come. We can meet you where you are as one, or if not, you're going to come to where we are, and there are other options there. So I want to let the community know that we hear you. We experience this as members of the community ourselves, and we care about these issues, and we're going to keep championing what we can in terms of the jobs that we do on the bench, the jobs that we do within the court, to make sure that we are addressing these things in the best possible way that we can, assuring justice, assuring due process, but requiring accountability as well. So I want to leave you with that message. And to the individual that spoke, that wanted to, ask questions about what were the police doing, and, what can we do before, what is the value added? Come to community court and see what we're doing. That's not the police chief, but I can tell you the police chief is a partner in this. And he works to be a partner in our program within our court, and he cares about this community. So just keep that in mind as you're making, your decisions. And I invite everybody, and when I say decision making, I'm talking about the community, not the city council. I know about separation of powers. But just, come and check us out. Come and see what it is that we're doing. The courts in King County District Court and in Shoreline, these are the people's court. That means it's your court. So you come and see what it is that we do on a daily basis. Come, it's your court. I invite you. And that includes community court every Tuesday afternoon, 1:45 at the Shoreline City Hall. Last thing I wanted to tell you is that I am working on creating or putting together a Law Day program for the high schools in Kenmore and Shoreline. I wanted to have it ready for 2025. I don't think it's going to happen, but I have reached out, and I am very hopeful that by this time next year, we will have either had a Law Day or we will have one scheduled. So stay posted on that. I want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you for letting me share as much as I have. Do you have any questions about anything?
Questions? Councilor Sassen?
A quick comment. We have seen remarkable work from the civics teacher at Inglemore High School. And so if you need a contact at Inglemore, I highly recommend. I wish I could tell you her name off the top of my head.
Okay.
Alexandra Baker.
Baker, yes, yes. And so
What's the full name?
Alexandra.
Alexandra
there it is.
Baker?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So that's my comment. And then I realize that this falls in the purview of what you do not do, but our community, as is true of the rest of the country, is struggling with anxieties over immigration and ICE, and I think it would benefit our community if you would take a few moments and comment on what that looks like from a community court perspective for people who may be feeling vulnerable, may be feeling afraid.
We are committed to due process. We have a responsibility to follow the law. But I can tell you that this court and this bench, and when I say this bench, I mean King County District Court in general, we're dedicated to making sure that the courts are a safe place for individuals. But we do have a requirement, and we do have a requirement to follow the law. And so we will do that. But in terms of coming to us and having your day in court and coming before Judge Hawkins or Judge Martinez, we are not to be feared.
Any other questions? Councilmember Shebek.
I might have asked this last year, and if I did, I don't remember the answer. It sounds like there's not a bright line between the folks that you see and the folks that maybe the therapeutic courts see. And I was sort of wondering maybe the distinction there, because I know drug court is superior court, but I think isn't the mental health court, I think, is district court, right? Yeah. Yeah. So if you could kind of speak to the distinction and how a person might go through one program versus another.
Sure. So in King County District Court, and please, I feel like I'm bogarting. If you want to jump in and say anything, please feel free. But we have 3 types of therapeutic courts. We have community court, we have mental health court, and we have veterans court. Now, we do not have a drug court program on this level of court. Community court is probably the closest thing to that. The purpose of community court is to meet a person where they are at, connect them with resources, get them on the right trajectory, and get them out as quickly as possible. So, and as quickly as possible in our world typically means about 4 months once they've opted in. So the goal is to get them connected if they need some kind of treatment, if they need housing help, if they need help with other resources, to get them connected to that. So it's a more short-term thing, but we're focusing on harm reduction. We're focusing on behaving in a way that's trauma-informed. We're focusing on wraparound services, getting a person stabilized so that they can go out and do no harm, right? And make amends. The other 2 therapeutic courts are more, and the focus has to do more with mental health, right? So if your main issue is addiction, the mental health court or the veterans court isn't necessarily the right place for you. Okay, because they're focusing on usually very intense Axis 1 diagnoses, so very difficult diagnoses to deal with. And so it's a much longer term systematic program that they stay in. And so there's a whole treatment program. It may include SUD, but the main focus, and when I say SUD, I mean substance use disorder. But the main focus is mental health, psychiatric help, and dealing with those underlying issues. And you're going to see different types of cases in therapeutic court than you will in community court. So you're not going to see assaults. You're not going to see DUIs. You're not going to see harassment. You're not going to see malicious mischief in community court. But you'll see cases like that in the therapeutic court system. So it's designed to address those, heavier mental health issues and those more severe type of charges. Did I answer your question? Okay.
And really, at the end of the day, I think the objective is to make sure that it's not, there's not just boxes. When we sentence somebody to a suspended sentence, as I talked about earlier, that is really the reason, is to be able to come in and make sure that folks are getting those evaluations, getting the treatment and following those treatment recommendations. So it seems like it's very box driven, but it's a very consistent approach, I think, through the justice system with King County District Court.
And, all of the, any type of hearing in King County District Court, you can come and view. So if you want to know what it looks like, you can go to those courts and check it out to see what it is that they do. And you can always come Tuesday afternoons, 1:45, to the Shoreline City Hall to see what it is that we do. Questions?
Any last questions? All right, well, I want to thank all of you for coming and spending your time here tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you to the city of Kenmore. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to our next update, Kenmore Prosecutor Update presented by Prosecutor Sarah Roberts.
Good evening, and thank you so much for allowing me to come and meet with you and present, explain a little bit about what the prosecuting attorney does for the city of Kenmore. My name is Sarah Roberts. I am your prosecuting attorney. I've been with the city of Kenmore 2010. I am what we call a career prosecutor. That's all I've ever done. And I've been prosecuting for 32 years total. I started with the King County Prosecutor's Office. I then, when I left King County Prosecutor's Office, started with Lake Forest Park, then Shoreline, and in 2010, after waiting anxiously for this contract to open, I bid on it and thankfully was awarded the contract. I have, okay, so my team, there are 3 attorneys in total, including myself. I have a full-time paralegal, a part-time paralegal, and a domestic violence advocate that works with us as well and works with our domestic violence victims as well as victims of other crimes and other witnesses that might need some additional information. Oh, I like to start with what the primary duty of a prosecutor is: to seek justice within the bounds of the law, not merely to convict. I think that's kind of one of the, misunderstandings about prosecuting attorneys is that, we're just here to convict everybody we can and put people in jail and throw the book at them. And that's not, not always the case. Sometimes it is, but certainly not always the case. And one of the advantages of working with misdemeanors and gross misdemeanors is that we're not bound by the Sentencing Reform Act that felony prosecutors are. We have a lot more leeway and discretion in terms of what our sentencing recommendations are to the court, including treatment-based options, which we'll get to in a bit. So what does your prosecution team do? It's already mentioned what goes on in King County District Court is we prosecute misdemeanors and gross misdemeanor crimes. Those are crimes punishable 90 days in jail and a $1,000 fine, 364 days in jail and a $5,000 fine. We do not handle any of the felony crimes that happen here in the city of Kenmore. All of those are referred to the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. So crimes that we do handle, driving under the influence cases, domestic violence, assault cases, reckless driving, malicious mischief, criminal trespass, those types of cases. Felony matters tend to include, rapes, murders, serious assaults with serious injuries, and we don't handle those within our office. Additionally, we advise law enforcement on legal updates and often criminal procedure issues. I'm available to our police officers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Thankfully, I don't often get calls at 2 o'clock in the morning, but occasionally I do. And when a deputy's out on the street and they have a question about how to handle a situation, they can call me. I appreciate those calls. An ounce of prevention is oftentimes better than a pound of cure. And it's best to get, those discussions done right away. They can also, they call me after the fact to talk about cases and talk about laws that have come out that they've read about maybe or read in the newspaper. So it's nice to have a good working relationship with our deputies. We have an amazing group of deputies, including our wonderful chief, but we have some really great deputies working for the city of Kenmore. And then, additionally, we meet with city and court personnel, sometimes have meetings. I saw Ms. right down here. Nice to see you, Dawn. I talk with Dawn, email with Dawn sometimes when there are issues that kind of come up that might overlap. So that's the basic there. Process of prosecuting a crime. Crimes come to me through the police department. I don't take phone calls from citizens and start investigating those myself. When I do get those phone calls, I encourage them to call 911 and report those crimes. So I get a police report from Chief Moen's crew. I review those police reports and evaluate the substance of those and try to determine whether a crime has been committed, whether there's sufficient evidence to prove that crime, and then make a filing decision. There are very few cases, thankfully, that come from our police department because they are a great department and experienced deputies. So there are very few cases that I don't file. But again, as a prosecutor, every time I see and a report comes in, I'm reviewing it for lots of issues, but also it's, can I charge this person and should I charge this person? Occasionally, sometimes we can, but we shouldn't. Maybe something jumps out at me as this looks like a very valid self-defense claim on a simple assault matter, or I think this is more of a mutual combat here, and I'm not comfortable filing charges. So those are parts of the decision-making process. Once we've decided to file charges, we'll reach out to the witnesses and any victims in that crime, let them know that we are proceeding. Also, if we choose to not file the cases, we'll reach out to any victims of those crimes as well and communicate with them as to why the city won't be proceeding. Obtain physical evidence, body cams. I'm sure you've heard all about body cams. That's always one of the main things that I need to get a hold of. I don't always review all of the body cams before I make a filing decision because that can be extremely lengthy and time consuming. Obviously, if I have concerns or I'm on the fence on something, I can watch that body cam first, but we make sure we have the body cams, the 911 tapes, we have to order those. We're on a time crunch to get those recordings. They tape over those in 90 days, so it's one of the main first things my paralegal does is order those 911 calls. We order records from the Department of Licensing, if that is something that's applicable to the case, photographs, et cetera, depending on the charge. Then we draft all the necessary charging documents and pleadings, which include the complaint, the witness lists, no contact orders, that type of administrative work. As the case progresses, we conduct interviews with witnesses and victims, discuss and prepare testimony with the officers, and keep the victims and witnesses apprised of the case status, because sometimes someone will get charged with a crime, the defendant does not appear at that arraignment hearing. Sometimes it might be 2 or 3 years where they're out on warrant. So we do our best to reach out to victims and witnesses. I always do on domestic violence matters, but also other victims and witnesses to let them know it might be a while. The individual didn't show up for court. There's a warrant out. If you move, please call me. We're going to need to keep in touch with you. So we also represent the city at all of the court hearings. So both myself and the other prosecutors who work for me can represent the city at all court hearings. Those include the arraignment hearings, which tend to be the first hearing as the case proceeds. And there's pretrial hearings, disposition hearings where a defendant may enter a plea. Then there's, if we don't resolve the case, there's trials, post-conviction, assuming there is a conviction at trial. Then we have review hearings, and Judge Martinez had touched on those a little bit earlier. Those can, if someone's on probation for a DUI case or a domestic violence case, that probationary period tends to last up to 5 years. So if there are probation violations, we attend all of those hearings as well. Draft legal briefing, oral arguments to the courts, that type of thing, sentencing recommendations, and again, prepare the probation revocation, prepare for probation revocation hearings, and maybe ascertain additional documents. If someone's on probation in our court, judges tend to, as one of those conditions of sentence, tend to say no new criminal law violations. And we show up for a hearing 6 months later, check their record, obviously, as we're preparing for that hearing, and see, oh boy, we've got lots of new crimes here coming out of, other courts. So we reach out to those courts, get copies of those police reports and judgment and sentences, things like that, to show the court. So restorative justice, again, this kind of goes back to what I was saying originally, I think, about one of the things that I really enjoy about being a misdemeanor prosecutor now, as opposed to a felony prosecutor, is that we do have a lot of options in terms of what our sentencing recommendations are to the court. So we, both in reviewing cases and as we work closely with the defense attorneys, trying to determine what an individual's maybe underlying issues might be, including mental health, domestic violence, substance use, anger management, poverty, economic challenges. Those are all options of things that we look to in terms of how we're going to handle those cases or what the sentencing recommendation might be to the courts. As a prosecutor, yes, accountability, holding each offender accountable is certainly important. And there's that balance, you know, I can make a recommendation. It's the judges that really have the tough job of determining, you know, how they're going to handle that as well. But the issues there then, you know, can include the treatment options, sorry. They can include treatment options. And again, the goal being, as I'm making a recommendation to the court, I want offender accountability, but I also want to reduce recidivism. So reduction of recidivism and trying to keep this individual out of court again, coming back, stay out of the system. Please have this be your last, you know, interaction with the criminal justice system is always my hope. And that's where so much of the restorative justice options come in. So case resolution options, we've got trials, guilty pleas or plea bargaining, deferred prosecutions, that tends to apply to an individual. Deferred prosecution is usually utilized by an individual who has more than one prior driving under the influence. They tend to focus on driving under the influence cases, and usually you see those when somebody has a second or a third or a fourth. They're looking at significant mandatory minimum jail time if convicted, and oftentimes choose to go the deferred prosecution route. That's not something that I affirmatively say you can have a deferred prosecution. That's a statutory right, or it's a statutory option, excuse me. It's always up to the judge. They can deny that. But that's an option that they have, and they petition the court for that. Then we have SOC, stipulated order of continuances. I think you may have heard that phrase a little bit when the judges were talking about community court. That's essentially a contract between myself and the defendant. And we save those for first offense cases. And again, when treatment is the main component there. So domestic violence cases are not heard in community court. That's not an option in community court. So if I'm looking at a first offender domestic violence case, after getting the input from the victim in that matter, again, ascertaining underlying treatment options, speaking with Mr. McNichols, our public defender, and his office, we may offer a stipulated order of continuance. So in a domestic violence case, that's usually 18 to 24 months in length. If they comply with all of the conditions, they complete their treatment, excuse me, they complete their treatment, there's no additional allegations against the same victim or any other individuals, then that can result in a dismissal. So again, it's very much the carrot and the stick of having that case dismissed off their record. And of course, community court, and then we have regional mental health court and regional veterans court. I think I talked more specifically about that in the I think I talked about it a little more specifically later. Current court procedures, the court is allowing many of the defendants to appear over Zoom. I've really liked that option, certainly not all of them. I've really liked that option because we've seen a significant decrease in failures to appear. Our driving while license suspended cases or charges are classic. You're in court, you've been charged with a crime because you don't have a driver's license and aren't supposed to be driving. But we're asking you to come to court over and over and over again. And so we've really seen a significant decrease in the FTA rate. and an increase in access to justice, both for the defendants, obviously, but also for observers, witnesses, and victims who want to follow the process in person and review those hearings and appear at those hearings or listen in anyway, without having to come to court also. In person is required for certain hearings, obviously trials, anytime we're taking testimony from a witness, DUI and DV arraignments, the courts are requiring that, as well as when they plead guilty, the judges like to have them, they're pleading guilty or being sentenced there in person. Court has a paperless e-filing system that can be somewhat burdensome to be preparing cases and filing all those documents. But I can tell you that I really enjoy the fact that all of those documents then that have been filed in the case at any time by the judges or by opposing counsel, we have access to those. And it's really nice to be able to have that kind of access at any time at my fingertips over the computer, as opposed to having to go to court, go to the courthouse and ask to view a file or view a document. Also, our in-custody hearings are conducted remotely over video court, which has been great. Looking over at Chief Moen, I think he likes the fact that he doesn't have to lose a deputy on the road, off the road, every Wednesday, or even more than that, to bring people out. So we're very thankful and happy to be working with SCORE and the court on allowing those individuals to appear remotely over video court. All right, so we talked a little bit about domestic violence cases, and one of the reasons I always want to talk about that is that really the bulk of the cases that we are seeing are DUI and domestic violence related. I was looking at, stats and our numbers before coming here today. And, we have a list of all the cases that we filed, and it was just DUI, 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 driving while license suspended, third degree, DUI, domestic violence, all sorts of domestic violence cases. And unfortunately, we still see that on a very regular basis. In a domestic violence case, when an individual is apprehended, when an individual is alleged to have committed a domestic violence case, 911 call comes in, our deputies respond to that. If they make a determination that there is probable cause to arrest one of those parties or more of the parties involved, that requires a mandatory booking under the law. And Chief Moen may have spoken with you about this previously, or you may have prior knowledge of this. But it does require a mandatory jail booking, and those individuals are seen the next available court day. So the deputies then send me, again, the police report, and we determine at that point whether we're going to file charges. 9 times out of 10, we ask for a no contact order at the start because it's been such a short time period. Still a lot of volatility there, a lot of anger, potential witness intimidation, victim intimidation. If we don't do that, but we also try to buy a little bit of time when just to let things, cool down. Sometimes the alleged victim does not want to have a no contact order, and we can share that with the court, but we also tell them before the court hearing that it is something that we're probably going to ask for. Those few times that we don't request a no contact order, that can sometimes be with a victim who's an adult parent dealing with a younger, one of their children, I guess. And oftentimes there are, special circumstances there. We take that into consideration because we certainly don't want to hold the well, they're not youths, they've got to be 18 to come to me, but an 18-year-old in jail who may have some additional special needs and concerns. And in speaking with those family members, sometimes we do not request in those cases. Again, we're always looking towards addressing the underlying issues that may have, given rise to the domestic violence case. And 9 times out of 10, quite that high, 7 times out of 10, that involves some sort of SUD, substance use disorder issue. The amount of alcohol and drugs that we see associated with those cases is extremely high. Other times it's if SUD isn't, involved, and it's, again, mental health issues, and then sometimes just power and control, domestic violence related issues. But those need to be addressed. And we can address those through various types of domestic violence treatment. I think I have up here moral recognition therapy. It's a typo, it's moral recognition therapy, but that's a type of domestic violence treatment as well. Our domestic violence advocate, her name is Alyssa Schultz Bancaro, and I have to tell you, she is an absolute saint. I sit across the hallway from her office and listen to her, listen to these victims and speak with these victims. And she's so calm and collected. And even by the end of the day, she's still smiling. And sometimes I get burnt out just sitting across the hall listening to her and everything that she does, stressed out. But she's fabulous, and she provides support to and resources to all victims of domestic violence, not just the ones that are charged with a crime. I'm sorry, victims of perpetrators that are charged with a crime. She provides resources to all members of the community if they have questions about, if I wanted to get a protection order, if I wanted to get an anti-harassment order, that type of thing. So she assists them with that, provides that paperwork to them, oftentimes helps them fill out the paperwork. Might be somebody who had been a victim of a crime with their spouse, but didn't call the police. So we never knew about it, but that's how she can step in and help them there and educate them oftentimes on domestic violence and power and control issues. She serves as a liaison between victims and the courts and my office. So I certainly don't have the time to talk with every victim as the case progresses. Sometimes those phone calls can take 2 or 3 hours. And so Alyssa keeps me apprised of what's going on with the victims, what the victims' wishes are, what their concerns are, and updates me on that. And then same, I'll update Alyssa on, what's happening with the case, and she reaches out to the victims to keep them apprised as well. And then she handles the no contact orders, orders to surrender firearms, things like that for the court's consideration. It's also always available to come to court if a victim wants to come to court, particularly if it's a situation where we're going to be in trial or in some sort of a motion hearing. She comes to court to accompany the victim and show support to them there as well. Therapeutic court alternatives. I think as we were talking about earlier, there's the Regional Mental Health Court and Veterans Court. So the Regional Mental Health Court for the most part, it is used for Access One mental health diagnosis. That was a requirement before. It was only Access One. That might be schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. They now have expanded that to some extent. We've got PTSD, in there, and they've broadened that a little bit, and some types of depression as well. So that's been nice. Veterans Court, for those who are veterans, with an honorable or general discharge. And those cases tend to involve both mental health or chemical dependency issue. They will accept referrals on either one of those. The referral process it comes from my office, so we bypass the court, basically. I speak with Mr. McNichols, our public defender, or private counsel, if they're represented by private counsel, to determine their status and their willingness. Is this something that they want to participate in? Because anytime there's a mental health court or Veterans Court referral, there has to at least initially be a inquiry or request from the defendant and willingness to enter the program. So once that referral process is made, and Regional Mental Health Court and Veterans Court, you may know, that's all handled by the King County Prosecutor's Office. So I refer those cases down to those different courts, and the King County Prosecuting Attorney position, whoever's handling those courts at the time. Then they're screened for diagnostic analysis. They decide to either opt in to the courts, the mental health court or Veterans Court, or they decide they don't want to do it. They find it too laborious and labor, and time intensive. So those cases then come back to me. I actually don't lose control of any of those cases until they opt into those courts. Once they decide to opt in, King County reaches out to both myself and Mr. McNichols and says, all right, they're scheduled for an opt-in this day. And then I wait till just shy of that. We dismiss our case in Kenmore, and then they refile it in King County. Right, gets us on to community court. I think you know most of the basics. Our judges did a fabulous presentation on that. Just did want to talk a little bit about the referral process. So again, the referral process comes from my office. There are certainly types of crimes that are not eligible for community court, including any driving crimes whatsoever. There's no DUIs, reckless drivings, driving while license suspended in the first degree, none of that. Nobody with a recent violent felony criminal history. So that would be within the last 5 years. Additionally, nobody who has any prior sex offender cases. And we review every one of those cases to see, that doesn't hit that list, to see if we think that maybe they would be a good fit. Is there something that stands out here indicating that there may be some economic challenges? They may not have a home. They may have an addiction issue, those types of things. So it's not only based on the police report that I'm reading, but it's also based on their criminal history. I may have a theft case that there's nothing indicating the defendant was under the influence at the time or necessarily suffering from economic challenges, but I can look at a criminal history and see that they've been charged with theft 10 times over the last 5 years, or to be realistic, often 10 times over the last 2 years. And something's going on here. And so then again, I work with Mr. McNichols and in his office and talk about whether we think that they would be a good fit. So I reach out to the public defenders, make my referrals to them. The individual then comes to the first hearing, which is the arraignment hearing, and determines whether they might be interested in community court. our numbers, the numbers of participants in community court are not necessarily the number of participants that could be there. And again, they have to come to that arraignment hearing to then get referred to community court. And unfortunately, I may have 3 or 4 referrals on one day and I'm very excited and we're going to get all these new participants. And at 8:45, they fail to appear for their hearing, their arraignment hearing. Warrant goes out. When they do come back, we again always reevaluate at that time whether they should be referred again. So after the community court referral is made and they do appear for community court, they watch a full community court hearing, community court afternoon, and kind of listen to how this is different than mainstream court, what some of the options are, the types of things that we discuss. They're oftentimes kind of surprised how casual and comfortable it is. It's like this, except not so many people. We sit around at tables, we don't have the judge up on the bench and looking down at everyone. And if they do decide that they do want to participate, then they do, the first screening is a needs assessment. And that's something that one of the community court coordinators do. They talk to them about their past history, their past SUD history and mental health history, what they, want to get out of community court, what are their needs and what needs can we help them to meet. If they are interested in that, I then review the needs assessment and again, work with public defender, private counsel and determine what conditions should be included in that stipulated order of continuance. The great thing about community court is it's a shorter program. And again, carrot and the stick. I'm not going to watch somebody go through an entire 2-year program of chemical dependency, but our goal in community court is to introduce them to the resources that are in our community. And one of the things that I really enjoy is with our participants, they've said, hey, I've brought my friends with me today. They're not necessarily here in court, but they're out in the resource center, realizing that there are all these resources that anyone can get. It doesn't have to just be a participant. Oh, okay. I cut myself off right there, which was good. I can see you all starting to. Any questions?
Councilmember Lutz.
If you wouldn't mind going back just a couple of slides to the community court eligibility bullets.
Let's see. Oh, there we go. Sorry.
Yeah, that one.
That one. Okay.
The second bullet point says the potential participant cannot have recent violent felony criminal history. Could you speak a little bit more about what recent means?
Right. So any conviction within the last 5 years or a pending charge. So the violent felony criminal history would be, maybe an assault in the 2nd degree, a robbery in the 2nd degree. I'm not going to invite somebody to community court who has a murder on their record. I don't care if that was from if it was from 5 years ago, they probably wouldn't be in Kenmore at the time, but from 10 years ago, that type of thing. And again, no rapes or any sexual assault type charges. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Marshall.
Any discretion and purely hypothetical from Councilmember Lutz's question, like what if it were an assault 3 for somebody who's mentally ill for a long time and it's on a nurse in a hospital, but this time they're coming back with a misdemeanor in your province that might or might not be eligible?
Yes, and we certainly can. There's always discretion there. Those were kind of rules that were made up. The good thing is that when we're talking about violent felony history, we literally mean under that category. There's an RCW, as I know you know, Councilmember Marshall, and assault in the third degree does not fall under that category. It doesn't mean, again, that I might not consider that, but looking at the underlying facts, again, assault in the third degree can be an assault on a police officer, which I certainly don't like to see, but if there are mental health issues involved, getting them help through the mental health system is something that may be able to help us make sure that we don't do that again in the future.
Any more questions? All right. Well, thank you so much for coming tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
That brings us to our next update from our Kenmore Public Defender, Jeff McNichols.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all again. I get the honor of wrapping up this conversation every year, so this is good. I'm going to let you know, obviously, we all work in the same court. We all have the same topics that we have on our slideshow, but I'm going to try and sprinkle in some sort of public defender-centric ideas and experiences, just so you get a flavor of what I do. But I think I've met all of you at one point or another, or talked before you, and it's good to see you all. But I just want to give a little bit of background just to introduce myself. Again, my name is Jeff McNichols. I've been with the City of Kenmore as a public defender for several years, probably over 20 years. My law firm's been continuously operating since 1992. I came on in 1997. We serve as a public defender not only for the City of Kenmore, but obviously with Shoreline, Bothell, and Lake Forest Park up here in North King County, and also several other cities in South King County, and also the Muckleshoot Indian Tribal Court. I'm actually their one and only and longtime public defender as well. The attorneys assigned to your city and to your court are myself as a supervisor. We also have Sean Parent, who's been a lawyer for 25 years, and we have a new associate, Reed Myers, who's been working for us for 2 years, that works with us. Unfortunately, one of our longstanding lawyers, Rachel Liu, who was assigned to the City of Kenmore, had been working with us for 12 years, recently left to go into civil practice. So sad to see her go, but I know she had many good years working with you. You've heard obviously about community court a lot over the last couple of years, and my firm and myself was obviously started the Shoreline Community Court. We've also been instrumental in starting 4 other community courts, and I also personally started the Muckleshoot Tribal Court Wellness Court. Our firm emphasizes trial work, appellate work, continuing legal education. We even put on our own legal education seminars in-house, restorative justice initiatives, and non-citizen advocacy. So I know you've seen a lot of these these bullet points already, but what I want to say from a general standpoint is Ms. Roberts and I and the court staff and these judges have worked together for a long time, especially Ms. Roberts and I. And we do definitely have a good, healthy adversary relationship. But that being said, I think if there was a theme to the Kenmore Court at Shoreline District Court, it's not stated, but what you can see from the input and the output is, I think we generally, our goal is to make sure that the person coming in is better than, the person coming out is better than the person coming in. And how do we do that? I think that Ms. Roberts and I truly look at each case, and we do have the luxury, in a good way, Kenmore, the case filings are lower than a lot of other courts. And that's good as a community for you, but it's good for the attorneys and court staff and judges because it gives us more time to really focus on what's going on with the defendants that we see in the court. And we don't define them as a hit and run or a shoplift. That's their charge. And clearly they came in that way, but that's an easy definition. But the hard part is trying to figure out what happened. Like, why did we get to this point? Most people do not get out of bed and decide I'm going to go out and commit a crime. That's not their goal. there's underlying issues that create criminal behavior. And you've heard a lot of those tonight, and we all can imagine what they are. And as a defense lawyer for many years, you can imagine when I'm at a social event, people ask me what I do, and then I tell them. And one of the first questions I get is, how do you represent people that you know are guilty? And so I think a lot of folks see TV shows where the wrongfully accused person goes up against the system and wins, right? Well, I don't get a lot of those cases. I get some, and they're really exciting, but I know that unfortunately it's not that exciting. And Chief Moen and his staff, I'm giving him a compliment, he left the room. They do a very good job. And so I have to get really creative when I look at cases because they're pretty standard. We have folks that unfortunately do things, and we have to get really creative with how we handle them. And that being said, the creativity is looking at the underlying condition and saying, what does this person need? Why do they come here? And I can tell you easily that 90% or plus of my clients across all the courts that I work with come in with an underlying issue. Mostly it's substance use related. A lot of times it's mental health related. Many times it's both, and they counteract each other, or they work against each other. And very often there's financial issues, but it's mostly a mental health or substance use disorder issue. And so trying to find a way to make, when that person comes in and Ms. Roberts and I look at the case, we don't say, how much jail time is this person looking at? We look at what's going on here. And you can tell from the police report sometimes, if it's a DUI, it's probably substance use related. But on a good note, the officers are really good about noting what's going on. They're well trained in looking to see if there's a mental health issue and the behavior that may be exhibited. They ask questions about the person, have you been using and what's going on? Or they ask them, where do you live? And are you having homelessness issues? And so a lot of those things we know at the beginning, and we can sort of tailor our approach to the case based on looking at that. And so instead of just saying, this person deserves 10 days in jail and we're done with them, we say, let's try to direct them to try and fix the issue, whether that's getting an evaluation for substance use disorder, working with a mental health professional, referring them to the resource center, trying to find a way to help them with their Department of Licensing issues to get their license reinstated. It's education and it's incentives to try to fix the underlying issue. Clearly, there's going to be accountability. There are folks that need to be held accountable. I get that. Everybody gets that. But we're not, as Judge Martinez said, just coming at it from a punishment standpoint is not going to, it's a temporary fix, maybe, but when that person gets out of custody, if that's the situation, what are they left with? Are they going to go right back to what they're doing because they really don't have any other options? They don't have any tools. They don't have any direction. We don't want that. We want to see if we can make the person better off than when they came in. So that's a general point. And obviously we've talked a lot about how we resolve cases. And so a lot of those themes go into how we resolve cases, such as the plea bargaining, the stipulated or order of continuances, going to community court, et cetera. And we do utilize all those issues. I know we've talked a lot about them. I just wanted to give you my philosophy of how we approach those and how that's put into a framework of negotiation between the parties. I did want to talk about trials. One of the biggest themes in public defense in the state of Washington right now is that there are not enough trials. There are not enough public defenders taking cases to trial. Now, some people may say that's fine. Some people may say that's concerning. Ultimately, the person that decides whether a case goes to trial is not me. It's not the judge. It's the defendant. It is our client. They have the sole discretion on that. It has to be a decision that's well-informed, but they ultimately make that decision. Obviously, the lawyer has influence in that. We give advice, but it's alarming enough that right now the Bar Association has made a recommendation to the Supreme Court to change the standards of public defense to lessen the caseloads with the desired outcome of getting more trials going. I'm happy to say that in 2024, my little law firm in the misdemeanor world had the most trials in the state of Washington of any criminal defense firm. Not only in, I knew you're gonna like that, Councilmember Marshall. I've been listening over the years, and it wasn't even close. So that doesn't mean we're clogging up the Kenmore court with trials, but I want the council to know that we're doing our part for advocacy. And if our clients want the trial, that's their right. We're not going to try and talk them out of it, and they're going to get their day in court. In terms of the current case variety, I know you know what all these charges are, but the question is, what's going on in Kenmore, right? So I think you saw the chart that the court put up. What I'm seeing in just years of being in Kenmore doing cases is a lot of driving cases, right? We have obviously that big road out there that goes through here and a lot of travelers coming by, both Kenmore residents and non-residents. And so if those come and go, because a lot of those are not just Kenmore folks, there are people traveling through. The other things we're seeing, obviously there's some domestic violence. Most of that is addressed very, I guess, acutely by the prosecutor's office and my office in terms of how to address that. I would say that the cases that probably are most concerning, are not most concerning, but very concerning, are quality of life crimes. Is it trespassing, shoplifting, things that affect your merchants, things that affect, what would be quality of life, what could affect families and folks that are trying to just enjoy life in the city of Kenmore. I think those are a big step that the community court is addressing are some of those things, because what we were seeing for years was mostly the same kind of small group of folks that were unfortunately committing the same things, whether it was shoplifting, hanging out at Safeway, doing things along the busy streets, et cetera. A lot of those folks have been, I don't want to say targeted, but there's been an emphasis put on that to make sure that what's led them to that has been addressed. And I think from my standpoint, I'm not seeing those folks committing up repeat crimes, because a lot of the underlying issues such as homelessness, getting treatment and counseling, et cetera, has been addressed. I know it's always going to happen, but I think there's been a good emphasis on that. So representation beyond the law. Obviously, I'm a lawyer, so I tell my clients and sometimes my friends, when I get a case, I don't hit the books and start reading Supreme Court opinions on how to handle a case. That doesn't happen a lot. We generally see a lot of the same cases, and if we do see a novel issue, we do our own legal research, but most of what we do is really addressing stuff beyond the law, which is a lot of it is social work, because that's really what our clients need. They need help with getting connected with treatment, getting connected with housing assistance, getting medical care. A big one that was discussed is immigration assistance, okay? So right now, that is a hot topic in the news, but it's always been a hot topic in my business, okay? People have been being deported. I've been a lawyer for 26 years. It was busy back in the 90s. It was busy in the 2000s. It was busy 5 years ago. It's busy now. And so that is an emphasis that we started in our law firm probably in the late 90s. There was a couple of cases that the Supreme Court decided probably about, I don't know, probably 12 years ago, where if a lawyer didn't advise their client about immigration consequences, even a criminal defense lawyer, and that's not our forte per se, that lawyer was ineffective, and that if the defendant was prejudiced by the lack of advice, there was going to be relief to that defendant. So luckily, we had measures in place to make sure that we advise our clients about immigration consequences. And we don't have immigration attorneys on staff, but we do partner with the Immigrant Right Project, which is a nonprofit group of lawyers in the area. And I think at one point we were we used it more than anybody else. And just because even if it was a case where we knew the crime itself really wasn't an immigration trigger, we wanted our clients to have an opinion from that immigration lawyer so that they had a specific opinion tailored to their situation. So what happens is if we have a non-citizen client, we talk to them, we ascertain all their background, where they're from, do they have children, do they have a spouse, et cetera, and then we get an opinion that is directly to their situation that we can hand to the client and say, if this is your legal situation, this is your immigration situation, and this is how we're going to try and handle the case in such a way to protect your interests in both sides. It's not 100% foolproof. Obviously, folks do things that we can't overcome legally, but we give them the tools to make the right decision. I can also say that when we consult those issues with our prosecutor, they're very receptive to making a just negotiation. We've heard a lot about the community court, but I just wanted to put my own kind of, I guess, put a little bow on it from my standpoint. In my job, one of the hardest things to do is get a client from the courthouse door to the end service of treatment or any sort of help. There's always lots of barriers to somebody in the legal system to try to get the help they need. If you can imagine, many of my clients will come into court and they'll walk out the door with an order that says, go get a alcohol drug evaluation. We call it an SUD evaluation. And if you can imagine being homeless, having no money, no transportation, no cell phone sometimes, maybe you don't have an ID, then of course you don't have health insurance. Trying to get to an agency that may be miles away from the courthouse, let alone miles away from where they live, somehow schedule an appointment, get to the appointment, and then go through the paperwork and make it sure that that evaluation gets done when you're actively using, okay? It is a challenge. And so we can give them the resources, we can say where to go, we can say how to do it and all those good things, but if you don't have the infrastructure to get from point A to point B, it's not going to happen no matter how hard they try. The community court and the resource center is the answer to closing that gap, because you can get them in the room with the Department of Licensing, the community college, the housing folks, the treatment folks, the mental health folks, a food to eat, a bus pass, possibly a coupon for a cell phone. And that's why community court is so effective, is it does close the gap between the need and the service. And so that is why not only we may not have, hundreds of clients in community court, but that resource center does serve non-community court folks in the justice system. So if I have a client that has a case that maybe doesn't qualify for community court, but they still need treatment, we send them to the resource center and they can still avail themselves of those things. One of the biggest challenges I just want to let you know, facing the public defense community in this state is staffing. And there's a lot of lawyers coming out of law school, but guess what? There's a lot of high-tech firms that pay a lot of money for those people. And so for years, I had no problem refilling, first of all, not losing folks. Secondly, refilling our ranks with great people. People were pounding down our door. Since COVID, it's been a whole different story. And I think, Stephanie could tell you, trying to find a conflict public defender, because there's cases we can't take if there's a conflict of interest because we've represented both sides of the case. Finding an extra attorney is almost impossible, and it's county-wide, statewide. It's even worse if you get outside of King County. So luckily, we're fully staffed. As I said, we lost one of our great long-term attorneys, but it's an issue that we face on a monthly basis. And the Supreme Court, as I said, is coming down with a potential new rule that would force more staffing, more staffing that we don't have. So I'll keep Stephanie apprised of that, but it is an ongoing issue. I want to thank the city of Kenmore and your staff and your council for having things like this. This is the only, I've represented maybe over a dozen cities over the years. I've never come to a city council meeting except the city of Kenmore. And it's nice to have your engagement and your questions and your curiosity. And also, when it's the only city currently that I have a standing meeting with a staff member, and that's Stephanie and now Tammy. Everybody else, you meet them maybe every 3 years to talk about a contract, but Stephanie will call and say, how's it going? What can we do for you? What is working well in the court? What needs attention? And I don't get that from any other city, big, small, medium. So I want to thank you for that engagement. And I know that that's something that goes right back to the council. And that's caused some things to happen, like community court and EHM funding and SCRAM funding, et cetera. So that ultimately only helps, doesn't help me, helps the community, helps my clients, helps the court system. So thank you. That's it. Great. Any questions that you have?
Questions? Councilmember Marshall.
How many trials per year again?
How many? Sorry?
Per year again?
Oh, for our firm, I think it was around, it was between, I think it was like 28 or 32 last year. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the crew that I managed, we had 15. My partner had 17 of those. And then we had other smaller groups that did some, but yeah. Won't tell you the win rate, but it was pretty good too. I don't know if you want to hear that, but it's shockingly low. We got contacted by the bar because they had done a search through the AOC and saw, they were like, who's trying cases? And they said, you know, you're the number one. And I would have guessed we were like 50th. I had no idea. So it's good to know, but yeah.
Other questions? Councilmember Sassen.
I just have a quick comment. Thank you so much. This is the second time I've heard you present, and I just want to encourage you, if Judge Hawkins pulls off Law Day at the
Yeah.
local high schools, I would really love for you to be there.
I'd
I
love
feel
to do
like
it.
you have a particular way of presenting information and that high school students would relate to, so.
Thank you. I raised 2 high school students, so I have
Yeah.
some amount of ability
Me
to
too, I
talk to
wish you'd
them.
recruited them.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, well, I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much for
you.
your time today.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for the treat.
Yeah. And unless there are any objections, the council will take a 5-minute break because it is past 9 o'clock. Everybody's. Thank you. right, Kenmore City Council will return to order. Next on our list is Regional Crisis Response Agency update presented by Executive Director Brooke Bittner. Brooke.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Mayor Herbig. Good evening, council, Deputy Mayor O'Kane, council members. It's so great to be with everybody and with staff and with Chief Moen. As the mayor said, I am talking about RACER, Regional Crisis Response Agency, and I will refer to it as RACER as we go through. RACER, as you probably remember from about 2 years ago, is the product of an interlocal agreement between Kenmore and 4 other local cities, Bothell, Kirkland, Shoreline, and Lake Forest Park. And these 5 cities came together starting about 7 or 8 years ago, actually, to create the Radar Navigator program, which then evolved over time into the RACER agency, which is set up to provide what I call behavioral health first response services. So there was a lot of flurry in the community in the 2021, 2022 years around co-response or alternative response and kind of different forms of delivering emergency care to people when they call 911. And I think we've kind of gone past that. And what we're doing is making sure that when people call 911, they get the right resource at the right time. And sometimes that resource is a badge and a gun, one of your excellent deputies here in Kenmore. Sometimes it's a firefighter, sometimes a firefighter that's a paramedic, and sometimes it's a crisis responder who's a mental health professional. And in the picture, you can see one of our fleet vehicles. We have a fleet of 5 vehicles so that our crisis responders can respond directly to the calls in the field. They are also able to jump in with an officer or a deputy in cases where lights and sirens will make a big difference in getting there quickly enough. Or in cases, for example, with a traffic accident where a civilian car would just never make it there. You also see a picture there of one of our crisis responders on the radio. One of our biggest advancements since I was last here at Kenmore City Council is that our crisis responders are on radio air across all of our 5 cities. That was a big step forward, especially for Kenmore, so that we can listen while the crisis responders are often not physically stationed here. Our crisis responders are on 3 different channels across our 5 cities. Kenmore and Shoreline are on King County Sheriff's Office air, and then our other cities are on Norcom air for 911. The goals of the RACER agency as established in the interlocal agreement that came before council a few years ago are to provide crisis response to folks in the North King County community, to reduce police response to behavioral health calls, provide alternatives to police as the primary response to crisis, and to reduce strain on police and fire departments by reducing repeat calls. I would also add that this reduces the strain on deeper end interventions in the criminal legal system, like our friends and colleagues that we heard from this evening. The idea is to capture people before they get to the point where they need an arrest or a referral to a community court. So capturing people earlier on as they're moving through the criminal legal system. The RACER crisis responders out in the field are responding to in-progress 911 calls. They're doing high acuity de-escalation for folks that are in acute crisis or behavioral health emergency. They're providing some immediate resources like a bottle of water, a sleeping bag, a car seat, and they are figuring out what's going on, what's underlying this crisis, and what does the person need from the community of care, and referring them to the community of care. We do a little bit of follow-up, but our primary focus is protecting our capacity to answer 911 calls. And so the RACER crisis responders will engage with someone until they believe the person is fully handed off to the community of care. But that work is always taking second priority to being on the radio, on the air, and available to deploy to emergencies. And so it's not case management in the traditional form. It's really figuring out what in the system is needed and passing the person to the next step. And I will say that our crisis responders are really good at figuring out what is needed to kind of pack the vase and identifying the right appropriate community resources, be that linguistically appropriate, culturally appropriate, LGBTQ affirming, whatever it is that that person or that family needs, bringing them in. These are pictures of our crisis responders who are currently out in the field. And I'm really proud that we have not lost crisis responders since the very beginning of the agency as we transitioned from the Radar Navigator program and the Community Responder program. One person left to move away during that transition. But since then, all of our staff have come on board and stayed. And I think that's because we offer a municipal wage and benefit package because they are all City of Kirkland employees, and also because we really focus on taking care of them. And we know that the work out there is really hard. So we want to make it as caring and supportive as possible in here so that they can continue to go out and do that really challenging, dynamic, difficult work for our community members. I also wanted to share a picture of the folks that work specifically in Shoreline and Kenmore. The way that we divide it up is that we have people physically stationed at Shoreline, Bothell, and Kirkland. And the folks stationed at Shoreline can hear Kenmore Air because they're both King County Sheriff's Office contract cities and can deploy to Kenmore. And so these are the primary crisis responders that you'll see in Kenmore. On this team, we have 3 former designated crisis responders, a former emergency department worker, a former colleague of mine back in the day when we first opened the Crisis Solutions Center, and somebody that worked previously at the Bellevue Cares team. So some incredible experience specifically in your city, working really closely with Chief Moen and with his team. I also always love to point out that part of our governance structure as the Regional Crisis Response Agency, in addition to the executive board made up of city managers and the principals assembly with representatives from each of our elected bodies, we also have the community advisory group that's made up of folks who have lived experience in the 911 first response behavioral health crisis system. And this is so important to me personally. I'm a social worker. That's my background, and my orientation is this this kind of clarion call from the disability rights movement, nothing about us without us. And we have relied on our community advisory group from the very early days, even pre-RACER, to help us define what does our community want from an emergency response? What should our job description look like? What is the right kind of person to be responding? If you were in crisis and calling 911, what would you want to see? And that's been a super helpful source of intel for how to better do what we do. I'm going to share some data from 2024. I'll run through this relatively quickly. It is in your packet, but during the full year of 2024, we served 1,880 individuals during 4,713 encounters. And what that means is that many folks received multiple touches from a crisis responder. That could be several 911 calls, or it could be 2 or 3 repeat visits or phone calls or check-ins, like we talked about earlier, to make sure someone gets to the community of care. And it could also be dozens of checkups and 911 calls and connections. In some cases, we work with people over a very long period of time. In other cases, we spend 4 hours with them on the scene of the worst moment of their lives and help them adjust to the acute trauma that they've just experienced. And research tells us that that intervention improves their long-term outcomes. And then we never see them again because they have the resources in place, the family connections, the community support that they need.
I think we've got a question from Councilmember Marshall.
Yeah, please.
But you're probably going to hit this, any breakdown of that for Kenmore?
Yes, sir. A few slides. And I appreciate you popping up, though. Any questions? I'm happy to take them as we go along, Mayor Herbig. Thank you. Full program data still there. In 2 more slides, we'll get to Kenmore. I think this is encounter type data. We just started collecting this at the beginning of 2024. And that is what sort of broken down by encounter, how did we get that person? If it was an in-progress 911 call, if it was a referral from an officer or firefighter, or if it was a follow-up. And you're looking at almost half of the work that the crisis responders are doing is response to in-progress 911 calls. And to me, that's a very important indicator that we're doing what we want to do, which is of being available and responding to in-progress emergencies. That small slice of yellow is referrals from officers or other first responders when we weren't available to take an in-progress 911 call. And I want to see that shrink over time. And there will always be cases where, even because of the nature of the scene, we're not able to be there, but I would like to see that yellow piece grow smaller over time. Full program demographic data for 2024. You'll see the ends here, the populations for which we have data. Across the program, we're looking at about 66% white. And then you see the race breakdown there. We're always monitoring race demographic data because we want to, first goal, make sure that our services mirror the demographics of the community. And then second, kind of more aspirational goal is we want to monitor over time that racer as an intervention is not furthering disproportionality within the criminal legal system, which there's a lot of history of research showing that diversion programs can tend to prioritize white folks and further the disproportionality in deeper end criminal legal system interventions. So it's something that we keep our eye on. I say aspirational because that's very challenging data to analyze, but someday over time. So we want to keep watching it and keep thinking about it and keep thinking about how we can offer a program that is not furthering disproportionality.
We've got a quick question from Councilmember Lutzis.
Yeah, I noticed the end values are a little bit different between race, gender, and then there's not one listed for homeless status. And I was curious if maybe you could speak to, in collecting data, do you only collect some in some cases and not the others, or just why there's a little bit of a discrepancy there?
Yeah, great, very astute question. For every individual for whom we have a record, there are various data fields, and we don't have the data in every field for every individual. And I would say that you have gender data on more folks than we have for race data because gender is often more clear, more part of the conversation. They may have asked a pronoun. This is generally going to be self-identified information, whereas race data maybe doesn't come up in conversation. And one of the directives is that we're collecting data never at the expense of the crisis interaction, never at the expense of the rapport. And so if race comes up organically or as part of the conversation, then they'll record that. And occasionally it does because there are services in the community that are aimed, for example, to the African diaspora community or Spanish-speaking community. And so there are times when that information will naturally come to the crisis responder, but not all the time. And then the homelessness status, in past years, I have based it on the percentage on individuals for whom we had data. And I think that skewed us a little high. And so this year I calculated based on the entire population of folks served. So there should have been an N of about 1,800 there. And the final annual report will look a little better. But I think it's just knowing the way that we're collecting data, I think it's more accurate to use the entire population. And because I think the crisis responders tend to record a yes more easily than they'll record a no, if that makes sense. And given our kind of knowledge of the way that homelessness has gradually grown over the years, this percentage is consistent with what we're seeing kind of anecdotally. It's lower in the Kenmore service numbers. Kenmore N is a lot smaller too, so the data there is a little less, we have less fidelity, I think, just because of the small population. Which takes us to Kenmore specific data, a little less pretty because it was made by me, not a graphic designer. But during 2024, Racer served 88 individuals in Kenmore. And after David Dorian's comment, I looked back and made a note so that I could tell you we did over double the numbers of the folks served from 2023. So I took a peek back, and in 2023, Racer served 34 individuals in Kenmore. So that is a good jump. It was 66 encounters, so quite a bit less there. And that is due to a number of strategies that we've been implementing specifically for Kenmore over the last approximately 2 years, working closely with Stephanie and working really closely with Chief Moen to make sure that we're not missing cases. We are still missing cases, but to inch toward a place where we're not missing cases in Kenmore. I also want to share that we were recently awarded a kind of a small grant to purchase an additional fleet vehicle. There are times when the number of vehicles is the choke point for response time, and there are times when response time or ETA is the choke point for a Kenmore deputy to have a crisis responder come to the scene. So that vehicle is now on site for us. It has to get wrapped and logoed, but will soon be out in the field and creating more space and wiggle room for crisis responders to deploy across our geographic area. And that's just one of many strategies that we're engaged in on an ongoing basis to make sure that Kenmore specifically as a smaller city is getting the level of service that its folks deserve. This is all of my Kenmore specific data. I'm going to move into some longitudinal outcome data, but are there any questions here? The only thing I would point out is that, like I said, homelessness number is smaller than the broader regional population. That tracks kind of with my felt sense of what we're doing in the city of Kenmore. All right, I'm going to move into 3 outcome indicators that I get from King County. These are big splashy numbers. I do want to caveat that this is longitudinal data from 3 years ago to 7 years ago. And so this is actually referring to folks who were touched by the Radar Navigator program, a previous iteration of the program. Over time, we will get this kind of data coming in for the RACER agency as it is now. And I anticipate that we won't see a devolution in the data because our intervention has only improved. Although, of course, things like jail bookings are subject to all sorts of social factors. But in the data that we have over the course of 2 to 3 years after a program touch, the individuals who received services experienced a 68% reduction in jail bookings from before, for those same individuals before the program touch and after the program touch. So to me, a pre-post analysis of individuals is a really nice way of seeing an actual change in people's lives. This is information that we otherwise would not have at all if we weren't partnered with King County as a mid-funded initiative, because of part of the mid-levy is that they heavily fund analysis of the programs that they're funding, and they have access to a whole bunch of data sets that we would never see. So everything that comes back to us is person de-identified, but we know that it's about the folks that we served specifically. Another outcome that we get from King County is crisis services, which includes the designated crisis responders, the emergency services patrol, which unfortunately is no longer in operation right now, but hopefully will come back, the Crisis Solutions Center, and a 58% reduction there. So that's another really good indicator that something we're doing is resulting in an improvement in people's lives. A 44% increase in mental health services. The caveat here is that this is only referring to the publicly funded behavioral health services, so Medicaid behavioral health, that's all the county has access to. So I actually think this is a lot lower than what we're actually doing, because the vast majority of the folks in Kenmore, for example, and in the broader North King County community, either have private insurance or are being referred into a hospital network or a clinic network that would never be captured in this data. I'm pretty confident that most of the folks we see are subsequently engaged into mental health or behavioral health services. Just a couple of pictures of your crisis responders at work engaging with the community. One of my goals for the coming year and my ask for you as council members is that we think through how we can publicize what we're doing to our broader community, help people understand what is accessible to them when they call 911, and then on the other side of that coin, what they would get when they call 988. Kind of what to do in behavioral health crisis. It's something I've been thinking about. My team has been doing more engagement with community events like National Night Out and others. We just got stickers that we're going to start giving out with our logo that everybody participated in our voting process to choose our logo, little by little, you know. But I want everyone in Kenmore and across our RACER community to know that this is one of the things, one of the first response tools that they have access to when they call 911. And I can't think of anybody better than council members to help spread that word and help us kind of problem solve and strategize around that. So that's my ask for the council tonight. And the end of my prepared remarks, one other thing that's kind of breaking news since I prepared the slides is that our legislature passed House Bill 1811, legislation that was written by Representative Salahuddin, who now represents part of the RACER territory, with the help of myself and a handful of other leaders across the state. as part of our professional association that defines what we're doing as part of the first response system and then ties it into a handful of WACs where first responders are called out. It also funds some workforce development through the University of Washington's fairly new BH Core, Behavioral Health Co-Response Institute, and adds protections for peer support within co-response. But really that definition piece is so exciting to me. We're the first state in the United States that I'm aware of to have anything of this magnitude really saying, hey, in Washington, we do first response a little bit differently. And I'll tell you guys, hey, in North King County, we're the first ones that are really doing it. So I am so appreciative of our cities, our city staff, our police partners. We could not do it without Chief Moen and without the deputies being willing to have us coming along, have us on their scenes, clear it for a social worker civilian to come on and work with somebody. So this is an amazing partnership. I'm so proud of us as a community and just love being here with you and happy to take any other questions or thoughts or comments.
Questions? Councilmember Lucis.
Have a few, so I'll start off with a couple, and then if others want to jump in, I'm happy to turn it over. Thank you so much. I think this is a really awesome program and offering this alternative and, you know, taking some of the burden and strain off of our first responders who, you know, might not be as equipped to handle some of these situations or might be better suited to be responding to other calls. So I just wanted to thank you for that. I was a little curious when it comes to response times across the area. I believe you said, you know, sometimes that bottleneck is a vehicle. And if I remember correctly, they're based out of Shoreline. Is that correct for the Shoreline, Kenmore sort of area? I wasn't sure if you had any of that data on maybe the difference in response times between, you know, Shoreline and Kenmore when a call comes in, what that might look like. With the discussion of potentially adding a new vehicle coming up or looking at how we can, you know, spread those resources across the area served.
That's another really great question. Unfortunately, we don't have any data at this time. And also kind of unfortunately, I foresee us being able to do that for the NORCOM cities more easily and more quickly than we can do with KCSO comms just by the nature of the way that they track our units. And it's definitely something that we want to be thinking about and tracking and improving. Like I would like to have a data point about that shrinks over time as we improve in our ability to quickly respond and as we increase staffing and that kind of thing, but not yet.
That's all right. Thank you. I was just curious. Another question I had is I know that in one of the goals of Racer was eventually to get to sort of a 24/7 format. And I was sort of curious if you could maybe speak to where we're at in that process and progressing toward that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Last year, the executive board directed me to take a really close look at what our utilization was during our unstaffed overnight hours. And so we collected call for service and clearing code data from all of our police agencies and our fire agencies with help from our 911 PSAPs to look at our uncovered hours, which right now are across the 5 cities about 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. So this little slice of the clock. And we found that there are very roughly speaking, across the jurisdictions, about 1 per night during that period of time. And the executive board did a lot of thinking about what is the intervention that's needed, what would be the cost of that intervention, and included a first step in the budget for this biennium of starting with an on-call availability. That's not something that we've started implementing yet, but have started thinking about as a next step and a next iteration.
Thank you. Others have questions? I have a couple more, but I can hold off.
Go for it.
One question, I think you mentioned briefly that King County, based on the funding mechanisms and everything, that they require some sort of evaluations. You said that you had access to data from King County to conduct those process
Okay.
evaluations?
I think you're talking about when I was talking about the mid and the outcome data. So I will say it hopefully a little better. Mid is a levy, and part of that levy funding is set aside for evaluation, and they have a whole department at the King County Department of Community and Human Services called Program Monitoring and Evaluation, PME. I'm looking to a former employee there. Performance metrics and evaluation. And they have several staffers that are assigned specifically to mid initiatives, including RACER, formerly Radar, that are just doing this analysis and pulling in these data sets and depersonalizing the data. That's kind of capacity that we could never dream of having. As in addition to just the access to the data sets, they have all of Department of Adult and Juvenile Detention. They have all of the municipal jail bookings data. They have all Medicaid claims data around behavioral health because they're tied in with public health. They have everything from Harborview, everything from Epic, which is one of the medical record systems that Harborview and Jail Health uses. So stuff we could never dream of. But because King County Council approved mid-levy budgets that paid for quite a bit of evaluation, we do have access to that. So it's required of the county under the King County Council direction around the levy, but not of us. Although we are required to give them data because they're one of our funders. So we upload every month a data set that includes, that is person identified in a, in a safe interface that they then are able to match with the other databases.
So King County would have some of those records, those evaluations accessible for anyone interested in some of the
I can't
evaluations.
hear you very
Sorry,
well.
I'll try and speak into the mic a little bit better. So King County, they have some of those evaluations accessible that can be.
Oh, yes. So King County, thank you for helping me understand your question. King County has public-facing dashboards that I will send a link to, but you can also Google mid-levy outcome dashboard. And it's very easy to access. I'll tell you that you'll have to find Radar and sort for just Radar outcomes versus all of the mid initiatives. But you can then see every year since they started funding us in 2019, the outcomes go through 2022. That's the last time that they published analysis, but it's all public facing, publicly available, and at an aggregate level. They don't publicly publish anything where the data set is small enough to identify individuals. But aside from that, our data sets are large enough that you will see data points and outcomes for RACER. Thank you for helping me understand your question.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion around that. And then the last question I had, it was regarding that the one data point that you had included regarding the 68% reduction in adult jail bookings. And I think you referred to it as a longitudinal study. And I was a little bit curious, could you speak to more of how that was determined and how the counterfactual had been identified and sort of, I guess for me, it's when it comes to trying to take county data and extrapolate that to a small subset or like region in the north, how that was done. And I think you said it was done through individuals that were individually had that touch with RACER. And I was curious how they were selected, if that was through a random sample or what that process may have been.
You're really challenging my grad school stats brain right now with some of those words. I'll do
I
my
must
best.
apologize. I'm in grad school stats, so that's.
I will do my best to answer, and I can connect you with analysts at King County who would do a much better job than I.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, an analyst here.
Sure, okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. Do you want to speak to it, Councilmember Shrevenick?
Microphone, sorry.
You guys send up your individually identified folks to the county via secure connection, and then they do the data matching with the jail data and the mental health data. And they look, and I think I heard you say in this particular case, it's a 2-year look back and look forward.
2 and 3. You'll see on the
Two or
dashboard that they're doing 2 and 3
Okay.
year.
So they're
look
looking at
backs.
2 and or 3 years pre and post the touch with the program. And just looking at the change.
The number of
in-
jail bookings
Yeah,
in
jail
either a
bookings,
county
yeah.
jail, so felony, or city jail, misdemeanor bookings. So all adult jail bookings. And I will welcome your thoughts after you see the dashboard. The 68%, there's actually another number on there that's 89% for one cohort that has 3 years. I felt like that wasn't quite descriptive because I know that jail bookings do tend to fall over time because of other demographic factors. So 68% felt like the most accurate, most recent version of that analysis. But any statistician's analysis is welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Shrevenick.
Councilor Marshall?
But are they randomly selected or
No, it's
How-
all individuals for whom we have name and date of birth are able to be person matched. And we generally do have date of birth.
So that 68% like represented everybody in the program? I'm just trying to figure out. if
Okay,
it's-
yeah, that's a great question. The
not.
population that was analyzed would have been folks that have a history of jail bookings. So it wouldn't include any children because these are adult jail bookings. Folks that have 0 jail bookings over time would not be part of that analysis.
The group was all the people with jail bookings. Is that right? Was it all the people with jail bookings or was it only part?
Let me see
It's
if I can
all the
find out.
people, it's all the people in the program that are adults that could have had jail bookings. So it's a, aggregate, it's, they're looking at an average number of bookings and looking at the reduction. Or you could, I can't remember if they also looked at total bookings for the whole cohort. But either way, you're gonna get, a reduction. So I don't know this exact one, but I mean, that's the general model is you're looking at, individually identified people. How many bookings did this group have in the 2 years before the, in this case, 2022 touch with the program? And then how many jail bookings did they have in the 2 years after that? Because yeah, if you're doing a 2-year look forward, obviously 2022 would be the most recent year you'd be looking at this point. But yeah, there's pretty good information about the technical aspects of it, but I mean, I'm happy to, I don't know, I can talk your ear off about mid-evaluation, so.
Definitely answered it better than I could. Does that answer your question? And I'm happy to answer what I can and make the connection to the analysts at King County to do more.
Any further questions? All right. Not seeing any. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Brooke.
Thank you. I
Appreciate it.
appreciate you guys. Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Police Services Report for 2024 presented by Kenmore Police Chief Brandon Moen.
I'll start by saying none of this presentation has anything about racers simply because I knew Brooke was going to be here, but I'll just say just today, this afternoon, listening to the radio, the use, regardless of what the stats show, the use of racer, the use of the crisis responders is hourly. I mean, it's not like it's a daily basis. It's every time there's a call, you will hear on the radio between Shoreline and Kenmore, there's either a crisis responder offering to go to a call or an officer requesting, is a crisis responder available? They have call signs. They know exactly what the call signs are, and they'll say, is Adam 91 available to come out to this? So for instance, there was a call in Kenmore where a crisis responder was here helping an officer, and lo and behold, Shoreline now needed one. So they cleared the call here, drove right over there. That's just, it's become routine. And that is, it's hard to articulate how much a change in culture that is within law enforcement and just first response. So that's a big step and a lot of it, I attribute that to the relationships that the crisis responders have built with the police officers. They trust one another. They're used to each other. They can ride in cars with each other and feel comfortable, or just show up to calls that are oftentimes very stressful, very difficult to manage, and they work together really well. So very proud of that. I will say, as I've said before, any success we have had or will have in the future is a direct result of Brooke. Her work is just, I can't begin to describe how lucky we are to have her. We are here because of, we've made the strides we have because of her. So very, very proud to have Brooke here and appreciate her, as well as the support of the council. Stephanie has been a big part of the, what is it, executive team? I forget what the group is. Executive board, yes, I said team. and has been for several years. So the support of Kenmore and the leadership team is very well appreciated. So that said, I'll move on to my quick presentation. If I skip over a few slides quickly, don't be surprised. So nothing has changed, quite honestly. It's the same as it has been for a long time. We're at basically the same staffing level we've been at since incorporation. This population has gone up roughly 30%. We're in the neighborhood of where we were staffing wise since then. Positions have changed, but the overall staffing number is about the same. We continue to rely heavily on Shoreline for supervision. I am the sole supervisor in Kenmore, so when I am not here, Shoreline is supervising for us over the aforementioned radio that we heard about, where we're all sharing the same air. So their sergeants are supervising in my absence. And I always show a comparison of our staffing relative to our neighbors and the state. As you can see, we're, per capita essentially, officers per 1,000 residents, we're second in the county, 5th in the state, behind Sammamish, University Place, Forks, and Briar. About half of the state average for police agencies. So I'd like to give some perspective of the accomplishments we do have, the resources were allotted. That said, we're still, well, for 2024, we were recognized as being the 5th safest city in the state, up from 7th the year prior. We'll see how we'll shake out for the following year for 2025, but right now we're 5th. I always throw this slide in here just to give an idea of the broad spectrum of the calls that we encounter and the raw numbers. There are really a number of ways to contact us. Obviously, 911 is that 3,000 number. That's the dispatch calls that people are actually making, and we're going to, you can report crimes online or issues online, and that's a 249 number. Or you can go down to the bottom and report issues through the service request process with the city, which is at 81. And I'll tell you that 81, probably 90% of those are abandoned vehicles. People like to report abandoned vehicles, either online or through service requests. So we do a lot of those. But I'd really like to just point out the, as you all know, the uniqueness of law enforcement is that we ask a lot of our officers to really be a jack of all trades. They're going to go from that disturbance involving the clerk at a mini mart who's arguing with the person who didn't feel like they got the right amount of change, and go from that call to a death investigation, and 2 hours later they're going to be at a call where they're managing a disturbance between two neighbors on a property line dispute. It's all over the board what these officers have to deal with. So we require a lot of them and ask a lot of them. So I'd like to put that slide in there just to point out the raw numbers and the things they encounter. And that bottom right-hand number I will talk about a little bit later. We continue to rely, use social media a great deal to engage with the community. Still doing weekend reviews of crime stats, things that are going on in the community, just trying to keep people informed exactly what we're responding to, and the just give them a general clue what's happening around them, so that there's some sense of what's occurring in their neighborhoods. In addition to the stuff you already know about, National Night Out, we went to Special Olympics, bowling at Kenmore Lanes. In the past, I've spoken a lot about nurturing trust workshops, where we successfully completed that this past spring in 2024, where we had the workshops primarily for families of Spanish-speaking families within the North Shore School District, specifically in Kenmore, that we hosted in Inglemoor, something we're very proud of that we were able to accomplish last year, and took a lot of planning, was very well attended. In addition to a lot of other school events, we're on our second year of problem-solving classes at Kenmore Middle School. In fact, I was getting emails today from students within that class asking me questions about some of the problems they're trying to solve for me. in addition to the normal community events that we always have been doing. Just, I don't know, last month, I think it was, I was doing a presentation to senior living community on fraud. We're attending the fire safety fair for North Shore Fire District, or I'm sorry, Shoreline Fire, at their fire safety fair, and the normal community service events that we go to every year. You're likely all aware of the things that are posted up there. I will just add a couple other unique things we've started doing. We also now offer free club devices, which are really anti-theft devices you can put on your vehicle to not necessarily prevent it, but hopefully deter it from being stolen, along with all the other giveaways we have. I meant to bring my phone over here. I was going to demonstrate one quick thing that we have on our phones for the language line. So the Sheriff's Office has invested a great deal in the ability to have officers have a translator immediately available for a multitude of languages. So if I had my phone, I'd show you, but it's dozens and dozens and dozens of languages. So literally any of the officers can pull up the phone, hit a button, find the most obscure language you've ever heard of, hit it, and they will pull up a translator. And there's the option of either audio or video. So if for some reason it would benefit someone to have, say, a Spanish-speaking translator on video, you can sit there and hold the phone, put it on speakerphone, and talk to the person that way. So it's something, like I said, the Sheriff's Office has invested a great deal in, and we're proud that they all have access to it. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. The other thing that with this language access program, so yeah, it's just literally hit a button and it's there. Spanish audio. Oh boy, we're calling a translator. We just woke one up, I think. But yeah, like you can just scroll through. There's just dozens and dozens and dozens. I'm not even halfway through the list of languages that are on there. And the officers also have a sheet on their computers that you can pull up, because we do encounter people that we don't know what language they're speaking. You can say, okay, point to which one it is. And we've literally had to use that because we're guessing what language it is, and it's nice to have that. The other thing as part of that program is we have a tablet at the front desk that has the same app. So it's essentially the phone app, but on a tablet. And it's on a little pedestal that the front desk staff can use and have used. Without a police station here, if someone does need the police, they typically just walk in the front door looking for the police station. They're our front line, they're our the first face they see. So having that tablet from the Sheriff's Office is very helpful. So there was that scary number I was referencing earlier, though it's not necessarily on this slide. We are continuing to support engineering services with the automated enforcement program. The green chart there is just to point out the changes that happened in November when we went 24/7 with the cameras. So we're reviewing around 1,000 a month during school times. And then in November, we went to 11,000. Now, I will say since then, and I won't steal Tobin's thunder, I know he's coming in next month, but just to give you a general idea, that spike has gone down considerably. So we went from 11,000 in November. I want to say in March, we reviewed a little over 5,000. So people got the clue. It's went down considerably. Now we're going to, with the addition of the Inglemoor camera, it's going to spike again, and then we'll go back down again. So, but we're talking about 2024, and that was a big event in November of 2024 when we went from, like I said, about 1,000 to 11,000 reviews. Body worn cameras, everyone has them on patrol. I have one as well. I'm not wearing it right now, but I typically will have one. We're obtaining a lot of great video. I think it really puts as you heard Prosecutor Roberts say, it really provides an insight as to what the officers encountered, what the victim said, what was their demeanor, exactly what occurred. And so it's provides great evidence, great context for everything we encounter. As you can see in the bottom left and the bottom right, both daytime and nighttime creates great footage. upper right is someone, I believe it was a DUI driver trying to hide from us and in some sticker bushes, but did not work out. Yeah, for them. National Night Out, August 6th. You can mark that on your calendars. It's, as we have in the past couple years, do it in conjunction with the farmers market on a Wednesday. The rest of the world does it on Tuesdays. We do it on the Wednesday. It works out great. Had great turnout last year. We'll do that again. The next two slides, they are a little odd in that this is something Rob had always asked for, kind of comparing our crime stats specifically with their neighbors. It's difficult to do because it's not, all the cities do not submit all their crime data, and it's not all compiled by the state immediately. It doesn't happen in the middle of the year. So we're always looking a year behind. So this data is actually comparing our 2023 crime data with our neighbors. Bottom line is, though, as has been the case in past years, it's considerably lower for Kenmore relative to our neighbors. And this is the same thing, but for the county, whereas we were fourth lowest in that crime rate of crimes per 1,000 residents. So kind of nestled between Carnation and Mercer Island. So jumping back to 2024, dispatch calls or service are actually down a little bit this past year. I contribute that to what I mentioned before, and that we're really pushing online reporting. When you call 911, if it is a crime that's not in progress, there's no suspect, there is no evidence to collect, it is something that could likely be reported online depending on the type of crime it is. So we're really pushing that, leveraging technology to avoid having to send an officer out to every single cold call. So you are going to see those numbers. Dispatch calls for service probably continue to go down slightly every year. The average response times, I always look at these with a giant grain of salt. They're highly influenced by just a few outliers. Looking at the priority one response time, how it went up, I looked closer into that. There's not a lot of data points, so it doesn't take long for one obscure data point to influence it by a great deal. So for instance, a call that was categorized as priority one may have held for a long time and skewed that number, but it held because maybe it was a domestic violence call where the parties were separated before the officers arrived. So they rerouted from that call to go to another call because that was now a higher priority. Well, now that priority one call is holding longer, and maybe it's holding for half an hour, and that skews that number up. So I wouldn't say ignore the response times, but it's with so few data points, it's not a great statistic in my opinion.
Got a question from Councilmember
Yeah.
Lucas.
Just really quickly for clarification's sake, does that chart, the previous slide, does that include calls where Kenmore officers may be dispatched to neighboring jurisdictions, sort of like a mutual aid thing, whether that's Shoreline, Woodinville, whoever?
Where the Shoreline cars are coming over here to assist us,
or if we're going over there to assist.
So these are only calls that occurred in Kenmore.
Okay, so
regardless of who
dispatch from
responded.
Kenmore. Okay, so not just officers that are dispatched, but if the call originated in Kenmore.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. As in past years, the districts, this is gives you an idea of where the busiest districts are. And as you expect, they're the districts that have the most traffic and the most businesses. What we consider to be the Edward 3, which is along Bothell Way, and the Edward 2, which also contains a portion of the commercial district along Bothell Way. So that's all to be as expected. Skip right over some of these. NIBRS categorizes, our crime data is categorized into 3 different parts: crimes against persons, crimes against property, crimes against society. Crimes against persons, think of DVs, think of assaults, things of that sort. Crimes against property, more the vandalism, thefts, burglaries. So you can see crimes against persons, where there was a slight uptick. There's a direct result of domestic violence, which I'll show in another slide, and skip forward to that right now. As you can see, that small spike in domestic violence. You know, the Prosecutor Roberts spoke about this and how the kind of the process of, you know, we arrest someone for domestic violence and typically a judge will enter a no contact order, an anti-harassment order, or a protection order. Well, that can oftentimes lead to a second arrest and maybe a third arrest. So it can spiral quickly, and that's what really led to a lot of these stats increasing. And that, say if those 61 domestic violence cases, 62 of them were assaults. So, you know, roughly 2/3 were assaults and a third were no contact order violations. And probably a significant percentage of those no contact order arrests started from an assault case. Burglaries down considerably over the course of the last several years. What's unique about this is that residential burglaries are down 50% in the past year, which I'm very happy of. Residential burglaries are one of the worst property crimes, if not the worst property crime, in my opinion. It's just very violating to have someone come in your home, kick in the door, or break in to what should be your safe space. So residential burglary is a very tough property crime. So the fact that it's down 50% here, I'm very proud of. On the other hand, commercial burglary unfortunately went up 44%. So a lot of those were, about 50% were your kind of traditional commercial burglaries. That's someone kicking in the front door of a business, or we had a couple where they drove a stolen car through the front door of the business. That's been a regional issue. So again, those commercial burglaries are up, residential burglaries down. Motor vehicle thefts have been an issue in the whole state, as it's been well publicized. There's a huge spike around COVID or shortly thereafter. They're generally going down now statewide, not necessarily everywhere, but generally they are. Here, we're still starting to level out. They're up about 10% from the previous year. What I find interesting is if you look at 2016 versus 2024 burglaries versus motor vehicle thefts, burglaries are half of what they were in 2016 versus vehicle thefts, which have more than doubled. So stealing cars, not breaking into houses.
Is that the Hyundai Kia situation, or is it something else?
I think it's probably a larger societal issue. I don't know exactly why, but just looking at the charts, it's interesting. I will say that of the vehicle thefts here, of those 65, only 15% were either Hyundai or Kia. So not a huge percentage. We also had 15% were U-Hauls, so about the same percentage. So actually, before I get into that, I'll just say, we can, in addition to handing out the anti-theft devices, we're continuing to try to identify trends. Where are those vehicle thefts happening? How can we stop them? It's a difficult crime to capture people. It's dangerous to chase them if we do catch them in the act. So it's something. It's an ongoing project for us.
We have a question from Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, compared to like residential burglaries, I mean, are the car thefts, I mean, is that more of a, I mean, organized crime is kind of a term, but I mean, is it more organized or is it kind of just random people?
The vehicle thefts?
Yeah.
My impression, at least regionally, is that it's not organized crime. Typically, the vehicle thefts are now occurring to facilitate other crimes. So, for instance, I just referenced the marijuana store that, our one marijuana store that it was broken into. It was a stolen car that was driven right through the front doors, and then they all committed the burglary, ran out, and got into a different stolen car that they had staged to leave in. So it's a lot of that. It's a lot of crime being committed, whether it be mail thefts, burglaries, where they're just using that car as a vessel to do it. Yeah. Traffic collisions, it's good, they're down considerably from 2023. actually closer to what they were just getting out of COVID. I always try to give a little more information. We're nearing the end. I'm on the last 2 pages here. A little more information on pedestrian and bicyclist collisions. So the bicyclist / other collisions, and I say other because 4 out of those 10 involved an electric bike, a scooter, a skateboard, something with wheels. What was interesting is that 6 out of those 10 collisions actually involved some type of facility for them or somewhere you'd think would be safe. So a bike lane, a trail, the trail, a sidewalk, or a parking lot where you generally think someone would be safe on a bicycle. So 6 out of those 10 didn't even occur in a roadway. They occurred in a bike lane, maybe where the bike lane is crossing the roadway, or a vehicle would cross with the bike lane or trail and whatnot. So that's a little unusual. Of our 7 pedestrian collisions, 4 of them actually were at an intersection. So basically someone turning into an intersection, not paying attention, making a right turn, making a left turn, just not seeing the pedestrian in the crosswalk. So the crosswalk there, they just didn't see them for whatever reason. I will say that none of those pedestrian collisions occurred at a non-signalized intersection. So kind of your mid-block crossing where we've had tragedy in the past, none of those collisions happened there. These were all either at an intersection or something unusual. And I should mention the 2 fatal collisions, unfortunately, we did have last year would categorize as highly unusual. One being a homicide that was intentional, which I don't necessarily need to get into, and the other one being someone that made a poor decision to lay down in the roadway. So again, nothing that from a design perspective of the city that we could have prevented. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. So looking at historic trends for bicycles and pedestrian collisions, blue being pedestrians and the orange being your bicyclists and others. The bike collisions obviously being up. I'm sorry, bike collisions being down, pedestrians being up. Again, that spike from 4 to 7 being the unique thing within this chart. 3 of those were being I'm sorry, 1 was in a parking lot and the other 2 were the unusual ones I just spoke about that were unfortunately not preventable from our perspective. Where were those collisions? Scattered all over the city, as you expect, tend to be focused on the higher traffic roadways, the arterials, where we see the most interactions. So nearing the end here, just a summary of our just general crime stats. Again, calls of service down, but online reporting is up. Collisions are down. Burglaries as a whole were down, that we talked about. Res burglars are up. I'm sorry, res burglars were down. Commercial burglaries are up. Generally, fraud is down, though. It continues to be an issue. If you follow us on social media, you'll see that I'm constantly pleading with people to talk to their family members, particularly elderly family members, about fraud and avoiding the people that are out there trying to take advantage of them, because it seems like a weekly basis I'm taking another fraud case where someone's lost thousands of dollars and someone elderly has fallen for a scam. So though they're down, that's something that's near and dear to me and that we're trying to avoid as much as possible. Again, we talked about motor vehicle theft and just generally theft and vandalism being down. I will say that while theft is down 22% on paper, it's fair to say that it's not always being reported. There are businesses that are reluctant to take the time to file a police report. In speaking to them directly, that have to twist their arm to file a police report, and whether it be online or in person. So while I'm excited to see it's down 22%, I know that's not necessarily the case. We are having more shoplifts than we're seeing being reported by the businesses. Next to the last slide. Mayor's pledge process that we started several years ago, part of that was reporting use of force data within the city over the course of the year. In 2024, we had 2 uses of the force. And again, the use of the force, as I've said in the past, it could be as minimal as you're getting arrested and ow, that hurts, you hurt my arm, or it could be a scratch. It could be the more obvious ones of being tased or pepper sprayed. Just aiming a firearm at someone as a use of force always triggers the use of force investigation. So keeping that in mind, we had 2 last year in the city of Kenmore. Both were found to be within policy. And given the number of dispatch calls to service and other contacts we've had, it's a pretty minute percentage. Made it to the end. Any questions?
Questions? Councilmember Lutzis.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for all and your officers do for our city. I think I speak on behalf of all of us when I say thank you. Thank you very much. I did have one quick question, and that has to do with the spike in CAPE photo enforcement and camera violations. How does that relate toward officer capacity? Is that taking up a significant more amount of time, or is it manageable?
So that's a work in progress. And I've told Tobin and others that I reserve the right to change my mind at some point. But for now, we are managing it in-house with the officers, approving it on duty as time allows. I approve a lot of them on a regular basis. Our detective does them. We are everyone has an account and we're all able to take our turn to do our fair share of them. Once the Inglemore camera is turned on and maybe there's more coming down the road, we may need to revisit us doing those. It would be my preference that they be reviewed by the police. State law does allow for civilian, non-commissioned employees to review them as long as they're being supervised by either the engineering staff or police. I think there's some value to sending infractions to people that come from, that you can say were reviewed by a police officer. If a police officer was there, they could have issued you this ticket. Instead, they're mailing it to you. I think there's value in doing that. That said, we don't have a lot of staff. So if these numbers continue to go up and there's a lot more to review down the road, we may need to revisit how we do that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Sassen.
Just quickly, also, thank you so much. I appreciated you referencing the Mayor's Pledge, which, if I recall, was a Obama era initiative. And at the time, I appreciated the city participating, and I appreciate you including it in the report. So thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much for your time tonight. Always appreciate your presentation. Brings us to staff report.
I just wanted to thank everyone who came tonight. It was a lot of really good information, and we really appreciate our partners. And I also want to thank Tammy Cork and Garrett Oppenheim, who isn't with us tonight, who are both involved behind the scenes and preparing all of our speakers and all the logistics and details. So I want to acknowledge that and thank them for this, what has become an annual tradition in Kenmore. Thanks.
Councilmember reports and comments. Councilmember Marshall.
Thanks to everybody who helped prepare tonight. I think it's awesome. And I'm so happy we got a consent agenda that passed the beginning of the work for the sidewalks on 61st. I am so happy. So I would like the city manager to officially thank every staff member involved. Please give a vigorous thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Sassen.
Thank you. I'll pass tonight.
Councilmember Shepnick.
Nothing to add.
Councilmember Lutzis.
Thank you to all our public safety partners. Nothing else.
Deputy Mayor.
On Saturday, I volunteered at the Port of Seattle with One America for a Citizenship Clinic. And it was actually really amazing, the team that came together for that. About approximately 40 people came through and were helped by attorneys and people who specialize in that. And I just want to bring attention to maybe there's an opportunity. I think it's a very big collaborative effort, that maybe we could partner with some of the cities near us to potentially work with One America. it was a big effort and a lot of a lot of work went to, publicizing the event. But I do think here on the north end of Lake Washington, there probably are needs. And the more that we can support people get through the obstacle course that it is to become a United States citizen, especially during these times, is incredibly important. So anyway, I wanted to call attention to that. And I didn't say it to the people who were speaking today, but certainly appreciative of each of the presentations. And I think the words of due process are incredibly important. While we are fortunate to have courts and law practitioners here that, especially at the state, local level, that follow due process, it has come to our attention through national news that due process isn't necessarily being followed in this nation. And I just want to call attention to the fact that I don't think I'm the only one who's deeply concerned about that. And at local level, I don't know what we can do. But call attention to the fact that we are here to uphold the Constitution, and call attention to when we see wrongs taking place and work together as people and organize, or whatever it is, as individuals to stand up for the Constitution as it's plainly written. Yeah, not only on due process for that, but freedom of speech as well. Thankful to be here, and thankful to see each of you today. So that's it.
All right, and I have nothing more to add. So with that, we are adjourned.